live. All right. Morning, everybody. What's happening, chat room? Hello. Good to see you. Let's see. Pulling stuff up, getting ready. Show will start in just a couple minutes. How's everybody doing this fine morning? You good? Sound off. Looking for. Excellent. All right. I think sound should be all right. Good morning. Good morning, Carl. Good morning, EO. Oh, thanks. I'm very flock of seagulls today. It's getting long. And I ran, which is, kind of. Hi, Jude. What did you just jump out of the bed? Hallelujah. I know. It's a little, yeah. Which way does it go? This way. Please, can we stop at the end of democracy? Yes. I'm amazed still that people think democracy is so fragile. That's the salut, bonjour, good morning, guten tag, ni hao. Sounds good, looks good. That's right. Good morning, kind of, right? Sure. Well, everything needs a little bit of temperance as far as what we're comfortable with dealing with. Hold on one second. I've got to bring up a couple of articles. Get over here. That I may need to address at some point in the near future. Hi, Naomi. How are you? Warren, thank you. Ça fait plaisir de vous voir. Oh, merci. I like you just a little bit more because you have bedhead. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. What's up, Alamo City? Good to see you. Everybody yell out their city, where they are. Where are you? Where are you guys hanging out? What's going on? What's going on? Hey, totally Jersey. I think I have some general idea where you might be. We have to keep up the fight against evil. This is true. Thank you, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a.k.a. Richard Custer. Courtney Cody says, watching for work this morning, you book skydivers. Not many people want to throw themselves out of a plane. I'll do it. Courtney, where are you? Where are you guys? It's a good day to start fighting back. This is true.
We go live in 1 minute, Hal.
I love that idea. I'm behind it 100%. What's up with New Hampshire? Same thing that's always been up with New Hampshire. How are you guys going to do a queer spoke reunion? I'm a big fan. That's not up to me, but we would. Anaheim Hills, Tallahassee, right on. Denver, what's going on? Oh, Chicago, Seattle. Coming to you, Seattle Sexy Liberals in March. Madison, Wisconsin is February 29th. We're launching on Leap Day. Huge fans. Oh. Hey, Hal, huge fans. It's queer. I'm from Taiwan. I'm Chen. Ni hao, Chen. Hello, Naomi. Ola from Baltimore. Sure, why not? Minot, North. Oh, wow. Way to be out there, Roger.
I have come
come.
here to chew
come.
bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Live exclusively for WCPT in Chicago, standing up and speaking out, here's Hal Sparks.
So, okay, can we start the show by stopping something? Can we start the show by letting everybody know that there was never going to be a vote that allowed witnesses from the Republican side in the Senate. It was not going to happen. We have been put in an awkward situation with this president and the ilk around him and the kind of shifting loyalties that go on within his circle to somehow buy into that's a good way to plan your day. And it frankly is not. Since John McCain died, as died with him was the ability for any individual to buck this president. Period. End of story. There is no Democrat, that has control over the Senate floor enough to force people to face what they're going to. There is no way they will convince these Republicans that somehow their legacy or something else matters more than whatever compromise someone has on them, or frankly, their genuine belief, wait for it, their genuine belief that what Donald Trump is doing is good. For all the lip flapping and for all the, well, I think it's terrible, the tweeting, but I don't know if that's, the kind of thing, all of that. I'm just going to land on the side of, I believe you based on who you vote for and what you allow to happen in that regard. I'm just going to go there. And especially with the Republicans, there is nothing that points to any evidence that I can see that any of these folks ever had a legitimate belief that even the ones that voted for witnesses, I do not believe that they actually thought that vote would go through. So it was a safe, null vote, which, by the way, to any senators that ever hear this in the history of humankind from this point forward, none of us are impressed by. The one outstanding vote thing doesn't do us any good. I mean, especially if you're voting present, forget it. So the idea that somehow they were going to save us is ridiculous. And we have found ourselves as Democrats in this zone of 3 or 4 times over the last couple of years, relying on traditional Republicans in terms of like Robert Mueller, which I have no reason. No, I'm just saying this is the spectrum from the most reasonable, where we're putting our faith in a lifelong Republican to save us, to literally hoping John Bolton rides in on a horse and saves us, or that Lev Parnas is being genuine, or that any of these folks will suddenly have a change of heart. Like, it's an absurdity. Stop doing it. You're setting yourself up for failure. Just know going in, they're in the tank for this dude till the bitter end. And there's 2 reasons why they could be in the tank for him. One is they're protecting their seat. This is one you will hear most often, that they are vulnerable Republicans and that they genuinely need Trump supporters to stay in office. And therefore, they are making a Machiavellian calculation that guarantees they will maintain their seat. And they'll, maybe they can be the voice of reason, this whole like adult in the room stuff. I call BS. I was never a big believer in this concept, but I do not believe it at all now. I believe that each one of these people, from Susan Collins to Mitt Romney, they all want what Trump wants. They may not like how he gets it, but they want what he is planning. They, with varying degrees, but with very little. They may whine about it, but in reality, that's what they're hoping happens. That's really what I think is going on. By the way, 773-763-9278 is our number. We're live on WCPT Radio. We're also streaming across Facebook and Twitter and YouTube at infotainmentwars.com. Join us over there. Join the conversation if you would like. Become a Patreon subscriber, patreon.com/HalSparks. Support the show. Did I do everything? Buy merch. There's a link below. All that stuff. I did it. Okay, good. Now, why would there never be any witnesses? Now, here's my opinion. The one upside of them never allowing witnesses is that Trump cannot claim exoneration in any normal room for the rest of his life. That even if he succeeds and gets reelected, and in his dotage as he's fading into the great beyond, out of office, when he goes exonerated in the middle of a room randomly, everyone will roll their eyes. Because you can't rig the jury, guarantee you won't get convicted, and then claim that it proves you're innocent. Period. End of story. So why, though, the timing, though? What was it that, because some of them were hedging and they were thinking maybe we'll allow it, and and I personally think, and I've mentioned this before, that the strategy should have been allow for witnesses, limit the scope of what they can say. Everybody's going to vote the way they were going to vote before the entire thing even started. And at the end, he can say, well, we had witnesses and we threw documents and they still found me innocent, and end of story. But he's not doing that. They're not having witnesses. They're not allowing the documents. And apparently this is a very anti-Alex Jones infotainment wars. We have the documents. Gay frogs. So why the timing of it? Why at least Lisa Murkowski? Because she could have been another safe vote, for example. Why would she not at least go for the propaganda vote? Well, on the off chance that there might have been somebody outside the vote whip that they couldn't count on. And we find out today, or late last night technically, that a trove of documents have been ordered by a judge to be released. They're not going to make it into the Senate, but everybody else is going to get to see them. This is from CNN Politics. Trump administration reveals it's blocking dozens of emails about Ukraine aid freeze, including the president's role. The Department of Justice revealed in a court filing Friday that it has 24 emails related to Donald Trump's involvement in the withholding of millions in security assistance to Ukraine. A disclosure that came just hours after the Senate voted against subpoenaing, that's a fun word to say in a hurry, additional documents and witnesses in Trump's impeachment trial, paving the way for his acquittal. The filing, released near midnight Friday, the timing, who would have thought, marks the first official acknowledgement from the Trump administration that emails about the president's thinking related to the aid exist, and that he was directly involved in asking about and deciding on the aid, wait for it, as early as June. The administration is still blocking those emails from the public and has successfully kept them from Congress. A lawyer from the Office of Management and Budget wrote to the court that 24 emails between June and September 2019 include, quote, an internal discussion among DOD officials called, quote, POTUS follow-up on June 24th. And they should stay confidential because the emails describe communications by either the president, the vice president, or the president's immediate advisors regarding presidential decision-making about the scope, duration, and purpose of the hold on the military assistance of Ukraine. So folks in the DOD are just releasing this without releasing it, Guys, we can't tell people what's in this because what's in this, it goes back to June 24th, which means he was lying about it by at least a month when he was involved in this part of it and when he'd made a decision about holding it back. All the while, by the way, Rudy Giuliani was flying back and forth to Ukraine and telling them in person what the president wanted so he could, whisper around the edges in this conspiracy. Trump's decision to withhold $400 million in U.S. aid to Ukraine as he pressed the country to investigate Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, his potential 2020 general election revival. Okay, CNN, guys, I got to tell you again, they didn't push for an investigation. The aid was pivoted on an announcement, not an investigation. Rudy had been over there conducting an investigation for months and found nothing. And talked to everybody and sidled up to Viktor Shokin, who was a Russian sock puppet who was working in there, who got fired, the guy that Biden bragged about firing, because the entire U.S. government thought this guy should go, and he's the one who got it done. Okay, so Senate on Friday defeated an attempt to subpoena documents and witnesses. Yes, we know this, which could have revealed more about the actions of Trump and the officials closest to him related to Ukraine. Senate leadership on Wednesday plans to hold a final vote to acquit Trump. I love how they're just not even saying it anymore. They're just going to hold an acquittal vote on Wednesday. So are we all going to gather around, get some popcorn, watch the acquittal? We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. WCPT820.com is the website. And the podcast from this show, you don't have time for all this nonsense. It can be found on the sexyliberal.com website and wherever else you find your podcast. The Hal Sparks Radio podcast, Mega Worldwide. We'll be back. Yes, excellent point. Let's see, hold on. Let's see. Roll this back because Diane said something important. He didn't get fired. He got voted out of office by the Ukrainian parliament. Exactly. So I'm using fired as, as he got him out of there, that languaging is used a lot. But the reality is the U.S. presented, as a government, presented an ultimatum about a bunch of people. He was one of the stragglers, and the parliament got rid of him. Thank you. He apparently know about this, and it turned out to be. Is that why Russia hacked Burisma? I would go with yeah. I mean, ultimately, if you can't find evidence, why not just put some on the servers? Is anybody going to ask a second question? Is Fox going to vet stuff that comes from Burisma if it's released by WikiLeaks? Or you think they're going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and make sure, okay, Russia got into this hardware, so we might want to take what we're seeing with a grain of salt and find something to compare it against before we say it's real. Again, this goes to why you can't take hacked emails from people as evidence.
Back in 60, Hal.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
2 callers.
Okay. Wow, right out of the gate. There we go. Does anyone still think any Republicans will do something for the good of the country ever again? Not this batch in office. There's a bunch that are not in office that would, I would imagine. I know a few. They have run into a distinct problem where there's a large group of these folks that are simply corrupt. Yeah, Hal Vickery. I watched it intermittently and picked off pieces of it, but I mean, I know the argument from both sides, anyways. And
This is Doris Davenport, host of The Doris Davenport Show, all local, all the time. Now let's get back to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So we have 2 callers right out of the gate, so I want to get them before we start stacking near the end, because I have no doubt, because of the contentious nature of some of the stories I'm going to be talking about, that we'll get packed with trolls near the end of the show. That's my guess. Who do we have, Devin?
First, we have Dave on Glen Ellen.
Cool. Hey, Dave. Welcome.
Hey, Hal, I just had a brief comment. I just wanted to make a general comment. I think the Democratic Party needs to change the way that it goes about its business. I think that the way we're pushing back against people like Trump and McConnell is not working in certain segments of our society.
Okay.
Trump the bully. You can't fight clean with somebody like that. I know from personal experience in my life that a person like that, it's just not working. And I just wondered what you thought.
Well, here's the thing. My strategy has always been when dealing with Trump or some of the hardcores that are around him, when you're discussing them in public, is to be aware of the people that you are talking to that is just past them. The person who isn't 100% all in, the person who isn't bought into the entire Trump thing, but there are elements that they see as successful or elements that they see as solving problems that they think no one else has dealt with. And so they're lining up behind him because he's the meanest dog pulling the sled, but it's not that they're all in on him. And if you automatically attach them morally to him in your vilification and how you talk about him, they will take personal offense to it and entrench their beliefs. There was a big study that...
I'm not so much talking about Trump supporters as I am Trump himself and the way that you would present yourself in like a, maybe not an argument, but a discussion or a debate with him. You have to be forceful and strong and push back.
I agree. I mean, you can't I don't think most are are playing kind of the ropes with him much these days. Anymore. I mean, there certainly was the strategy in the beginning. I think the normalcy factor happens more in media with Donald Trump in that they present what he's doing as normal and as if it's in line with past norms, which is that's in an attempt to seem balanced in their, to their readers, which is a very difficult line to walk. I don't envy them for that. I do think most of, if not all of, the Democrats who are running for president, for example, push back very hard about him, have talked distinctly about his failures as a leader, as his moral failures, his weakness of character, all that kind of stuff. And I think the big lesson is mockery. I think you have to mock this man, make fun of him, and hold on to your sense of humor.
That's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, you got to get a little dirty when you fight somebody like this. You can't.
I wouldn't call that dirty. I would just say, especially if you keep your humor about you. That's the way you stay out of the dirt. Just tossing expletives and vitriol won't solve it. But yeah, you have to. This is a game of yard snaps to some degree. And what you do is you hold firm about, say, comity in the Senate and behavior on the House floor, for example. Everywhere out here with us rabble, we can say whatever we want. And anybody who's running for office, especially who isn't a senator or a sitting congressperson, I think has even more of a role to play in chipping away at this perceived strength of Donald Trump, because that's really what this is about. This is really about pulling back the curtain on this kind of Wizard of Oz character and showing how ultimately weak he is, both morally, mentally, and intellectually. And I think
I agree with that. I believe that he's not weak. He covers it up with the bluster and the bullying and the name calling and the fake bravado.
Yeah, and there's also a problem that the Democrats have that in our inclusiveness with other people, calling him out on some of his weaknesses, literally we have waiting in the wings the idea of slut shaming or classism or what have you, in the generalized belief that everybody should have a voice. That gives rise to people like Donald Trump, and it is the true way that things have to be. The question is if his voice is like that, then people like me especially, who I find great pleasure in pushing back in the way that you're talking about, have a sort of an exceedingly important role. There's an old quote that a silly song did more to bring down King George than did all the protestations of the bishops. Was the idea that it was people, in the beer houses, sort of, I guess it was England, so in the ale houses, singing songs about how the king was weak and foolish that ultimately brought him down, versus this idea that the Senate will take care of us. Our elected office holders will handle this. I say to everybody, get your wits about you and start up the mockery machine. And if anybody pushes back against you on the internet and and attacks and all that kind of stuff, literally you have to start letting it go like it is meaningless. I posted this thing yesterday that half the army that comes to protect Donald Trump is not genuine. And Kim in our chat room says, I think mocking a president is so disrespectful and juvenile. How old are you? I live in a democracy. I have the right to mock my leaders. I have the right to use satire and sarcasm to push back against things that I don't think are genuine. I don't mock the office of the presidency. I don't mock the system of government that we have, because I have tremendous respect for that. But if you think that he gets to do whatever he wants without being called out for it, forget it. Go ahead.
I've had the opportunity listening to, oh man, my mind went blank. He's on in the middle of the day here. Tom Hartman.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've heard recordings of FDR's speeches and some of the things that he said and the way he approached it and the force and the strength that he projected in a classy way, but you could feel the power and the truth coming out of him, and he was not afraid to speak up and speak out. I want to see that kind of strength and force again. That's what I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Well, you're talking about the very appeal that Donald Trump has to his own voters. That's what they were clamoring for to some degree, and I think there's a lot of trends in the social norms of America and the rest of the Western world that have contributed to this kind of idea. I mean, you can trace it pretty evenly back to the kind of grandfatherly attitude of Ronald Reagan, the have a beer with him kind of attitude that you have with Bush too. That people have this idea that we're getting the president himself is becoming more of it became a parental figure, not a leadership figure, but a parental figure, and then like a brother-in-law, and then it's like your rich uncle or something. There's this weird kind of idea that's the behavior we should expect from them, because on a personal level, you want to feel that this person gets you. That's been a big sales point, because that's how news operates. They take material news and they make it personal to try and get you interested. And I think what that does a lot of times, by the way, is take a genuine news story which has meaning and makes it anecdotal and worthless. The same thing has happened to some degree to the presidency, in that I see in the president, and what I want in a president is what I call the dignified manager, who has some genuine capability, and in a crisis makes a moral decision I'm in line with. The idea that I can share their pain or they know where I come from is sort of absurd to me, because I've never seen a president in office who reflected my upbringing in any measure. So I could never trust that was true. So to me, they have a role to fill, and can they do it, and should they live up to that? And I think you're absolutely right in that regard. We're at the break, but I appreciate you calling in, and it's an important discussion to have, certainly with the food fight going on this weekend. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Yeah, the vote is Wednesday.
Stephanie Miller.
Nancy Pelosi said it the other day, Trump doesn't know right from wrong.
Right.
No, he doesn't. I mean, we're in a battle for the soul of this country, for the truth. There's not one honest person that can tell me that he is not everything you teach your children not to be. Elizabeth Warren spoke out in the strongest terms so far, telling reporters, we know Donald Trump's character, and it's revealed every single day. There aren't any real surprises, just the details.
Stephanie Miller, weekday mornings, 8 to 11. Sponsored by...
Thanks.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Yeah, the actual vote is Wednesday, but we know how it's going to go. So Bernie equals FDR? Not quite. FDR understood populism and how to speak it, right? It's an old-time radio show, afternoons in the Chicago burbs, and they've been doing shows for World War II for 3 years. And Roosevelt versus Trump makes you want to cry. Yeah. Let's see. Exactly. Can't Stop Line says, also, Obama showed us you have to be smart and deft. Even Obama would slyly mock his opponents in intelligent ways after giving Republicans away many olive branches and opportunities for compromise. Right. Pro-left brought me here. Well, thank you, Heather. Thank you, James. I appreciate, indeed, on Facebook. Good to see you. I don't know what the little square is. I think is always a limitation. Okay, where's the troll? I'm trying to roll back to... Does Mitt Romney really have a soul, or is he just trying to center himself to run again for 2024? I don't think those are mutually exclusive, quite frankly. That's just the reality of how would you write the party that you're in? Mocking president is okay. What is juvenile?
Back in 60.
Yeah. What will we do if he gets another term in the House? This part two. Yes, and thank you to all the great Patreon subscribers. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you very much. Special gift coming our way to some of our upper tier ones, by the way. That's happening. Our president is not weak and not mentally deficient and very smart, and his counsel are holding strong. I met you some years ago in San Juan Capistrano with my husband, and Trump supporters are not stupid. I'm a person with 5 degrees who is primary care provider. He has done much for our country and economy that Obama left our country in ruin. Sorry, but I'm speaking on it. Okay, hi, Barbara, if that's who you say are. First of all, operate on the premise that I don't know you personally and know that you're genuine, but we'll talk about this in a second.
This is Ron Calgo.
And this is Robbie Earhart.
And you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back to the show. So I think we have another caller. Let me get them real quick, and then I'll get into this. Who do what? They dropped?
He hung up.
Oh, that'll happen when you push back on some of this stuff. There is a tendency, by the way, there's I guess across the board, there's this belief that that mocking the president is mocking all the people who voted for him, that if you denigrate him because of his actions since he's been elected, that somehow you are saying that everybody who voted for him is on board with that. I don't think that. I don't think that for a second. I definitely think that they are counting on him continuing certain policies, and I think there are a bunch of people who went as many judges as he can get in. The rest of it can be fixed later. And there's a ton of pushback across the board where people are, driving this whole argument based on the idea that he's got his personal issues, but what he's doing for the country is, we've never done before, when much of it has been. That's the part that kind of drives me crazy in a lot of this, is that he will often do things like this. How long did it take to get this done? When it, in fact, was either started under the Obama administration or even the Bush administration in some cases, and all he did was re-up it. He thinks he invented it. Thank you. So that's that's the running thing with this, is that if you're going to say he's making America great again and you're 100% behind him and all that kind of stuff, you have every right to do so. But understand that a good portion of what of the successes he claims are things that were already in place. All of the wall he has, quote unquote, built in this time have been are simply refurbished parts of the wall. The new design that they put together started falling over because they didn't put a functional drainage system into it. Now they're going to have to put storm drains on Trump's wall, his chosen form, his slat fence, so that at the base of them, that will have to be open for months out of the year. And this is why you voted for a construction magnate. Why you voted for somebody who could, a builder, a billionaire who made his money building great things, right? That's the theory. And the design he settled on out of the four that they have started to put in place as replacement for a bunch of the slat fence he's putting in is to replace old parts of the wall that were already there, don't have drainage ventilation, and are falling over. If you guys didn't see the pictures that were all over social media this week of the wall leaning. So there you go. Let's see. And yeah, a lot of people actually saw that this week. And so overall, there's no shortage of news going on. Life continues. And this has been my kind of argument for why I think the normalcy vote has more weight than people think it does, in that life doesn't need any help being difficult. And there will always be national security challenges, environmental challenges, tectonic plates moving, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, illnesses like the coronavirus, those kind of things. Life is full of enough of those without creating your own version of the problems. And Trump's kind of ongoing tweeting and this desire to kind of start fights where there need be none is an integral part of that. Now, one of the in our chat room, someone did point out alleged billionaire. This is true. Now, there's beyond the thing that came up this week, the Trump administration during the impeachment trial, while all eyes have been on that. One of the things that Trump did this week was he made it legal. He lifted the U.S. restrictions on landmines again, for example. Something no one was clamoring for. And one of the areas where they said it was obviously a reversal of an Obama policy. People had been trying for ages to get rid of landmines, basically get us out of the mass-produced IED business. And the region that they are going to put it in, the White House made a statement that, that this is to protect our troops. The reason that they're putting it in is at the 49th parallel along the Korean border. Now, the landmine aspect of the Korean border, let's talk like in Afghanistan, in Iraq, you could make a tactical argument for why you would want landmines in certain areas. People have used them there for decades, for hundreds of years, technically. Over 100 years? Yeah, just 110, something like that. Anyways, throughout certain military regions, basically because a push was coming or enemy soldiers were coming, and so you surround military forces with them, and that's been their traditional use. Their mainline use at the North and South Korean border would really only affect these days defectors from North Korea. I mean, that's the ultimate end to all these people we've seen running away from North Korea, that these very bold people trying to escape into South Korea. One of the ways you stop that is you put more landmines. You put the landmines back down. That'll put an end to that. And that's for the benefit of whom? Certainly not the escaping North Koreans. Certainly not the South Koreans who would run to help them. So then the next story is that under the radar, Trump expands the travel restrictions that are associated with his ban to a bunch of other countries, including Eritrea and Nigeria. And there are a lot of reasons to restrict entry from countries where their passports are easily forged, and this is the reasoning, by the way, that they're using. Their passports are easily forged. You can never tell if the person holding the passport is legit, those kind of things. But that would stop people who were both visiting. That would stop people from who were part of business delegations. That would be a blanket ban on everybody from that country, because you just can't tell who's who based on the legitimacy of their passports. But it's not. It's only applying to people who intend on being long-term residents, which just makes it feel like a racist broom. Like, you can come over here and make some money or spend some money and go back home. You can come over here and become a citizen, but if you're seeking a long-term visa, you're just hanging out. We think you're a crook. Beat it. That's what that is, and it's applying to a bunch of different countries. Eritrea, the country at the top of the list, the reason they added that is because there is a functioning slave trade in Eritrea right now that is playing on refugees who are trying to escape into Europe and other places, using them as conscripted workers, slavery, in a way to pay for passage. It's like an entire country has turned into the coyotes, the transporters who bring people across from Mexico and force them to be, drug mules or what have you. But all this stuff, seated in this is this idea that, these are things that the average Trump voter might want, and definitely stuff that the Senate Republicans would like to see happen, but they want to have their cake and eat it too. They get to pretend that they don't want landmines reintroduced. They can pretend that they don't want to limit immigration from specifically the largest black country in the world. They can pretend they don't want that while going, well, I don't agree with the behavior, and I wish he'd stop tweeting, that kind of pushback. And then ultimately you find that they're okay with these things as they go through. So there you go. That in and of itself has been going on under this whole arc of, and the coronavirus as well, by the way. The death toll has doubled in the last 24 hours. I think it's 256 now. If the number is to be believed, that's always an issue. The infection rate is arcing higher and faster than SARS is. The question is, will we have a version of herd immunity with this disease, or will we not? That's what we have with the flu. That's what slows it down over time. So in terms of its danger level, wash your hands, clean common surfaces, sneeze into your elbow, and I recommend limiting your travel to any country that has an outbreak of it going on, which I don't think you have much of a choice right now because of the State Department, I think, is limiting travel to and from China right now. I was supposed to be there, a little inside baseball. I was supposed to be in China about a month and a half ago, but we had a travel snafu and couldn't arrange the shoot. So lucky me. Honestly, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. 773-763-9278 is our number.
All right, Hal, we got two callers. The first one, he was the guy called earlier. He hung up and he got his phone disconnected. Super nice. Second dude is our crazy troll. So which one would you like first?
Whatever order they actually came in, it's fine.
Okay, I'll go nice guy, then crazy troll.
Cool. Yeah, I don't necessarily, I don't do that whole, I don't agree with Tom Hartman's if you disagree, you go to the front of the line nonsense.
Right.
I mean, I know it makes good radio in the abstract, but I think it's just that's terrible. Like honestly.
I get you. I always like to ask though what the host wants in this
Yeah,
scenario.
no, I appreciate that. I do. It's it is par for the course, I suppose. Because I can tell you that people are jerks and don't stay home when they're sick. But pushing the kid. What are you guys talking about? I'm looking back there. Yeah, I saw some of the C-SPAN comments that people call him. It amazes me that followers say he's made America great again. When I ask him to name what he's done, all they can say is, tell me what Hillary would have done. Nobody can answer the question, just like Trump. Yeah.
We're back in 60.
Thank you. Yeah. Over 9,000 people die worldwide of the regular flu. Well, regular is, I mean, the common flu, I suppose, is what you mean. It obviously mutates every year, and a lot of the people are people who are already in a complication. Usually it's poor health conditions, very old and very young. That's who usually gets it from the flu. The problem with this is we don't know the extent of the attack, and there is a belief, and I'm sure this will light up the chat with a bunch of sarcasm and the like, especially all the folks who don't like their dad. But it affects men more than it affects women.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back. So we got a couple callers waiting on the line. Who do we have first, Devin?
First, we have Richard out in Chicago.
Excellent. Hey, Richard.
Hi.
Hi, go ahead.
How you doing?
I'm spectacular. Thanks for asking.
Happy everything. You got like a real big day tomorrow.
The Super Bowl, the Groundhog Day, and it's 2020. It's a palindrome day.
And you never asked me to. They asked me to keep it close to my chest, but they're doing trailers now for the commercial that's coming out tomorrow for Groundhog Day.
What?
And kind of excited about that. Yeah, it's a big. They're going to do Jeep commercial. It's going to have a lot of the actors from the movie in it, and it's going to be very exciting.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah,
I like
actually a trailer on the air.
That's amazing. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it is like the fact that it's Super Bowl, Groundhog Day, and the Palindrome Day, which is the only one for 100 years, folks. Enjoy it. Yeah. Well, absolutely, totally excited. That's great. Yeah.
I made a mistake of wearing a pink pussy hat in the ceremony 2 seasons ago. That didn't go very well.
No. No. Was it just not ventilated well, or it was just?
The crowd was a little surprised because I took off my top hat and there was a pink pussy hat on.
Oh,
underneath
I see.
It.
Right. Yeah. Well, that
and the crowd. They kind of went, yeah.
Yeah, well, that can happen when people wear a vagina-related headgear in any kind of family outing space, I'm sure. I'm sure if there was a male equivalent phallus-shaped macrame hat, although there's an argument that they all are, that all toques are that way. You know.
Yeah.
Right. Well, awesome.
Well, you want to hear it?
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, campers, rise and shine. And don't forget your booties, because it's cold out there today. It's cold out there today. What is it? Miami Beach, not holiday. We can expect campers travel in and then that blizzards. Yeah, right here, the National Weather Service is calling for a big blizzard thing. But another reason people are especially excited, especially cold. Okay, but the big question on everyone's lips on their chocolates. You think Phil's going to come out and see his shadow? Oopsie poopsie foo. That's right, woodchuck chuggers. It's
Groundhog Day. Thanks so much for calling in. That's awesome. And enjoy tomorrow. That's fantastic, guys. It's the one time I wish we were on Sunday so we could do that live. You could just do it at 6 a.m. You should do cameos where you do that as a wake-up call. Like, do that all day today. I'm telling you. Be well, and let's grab. We got time for one more caller, I think. So before the end of the hour. So let's grab him. Who do we have, Devin?
Next, we have Hector out in Chicago.
What's his name? Sorry, Hector.
Hector.
Okay, cool. Hey, Hector.
Hey,
go ahead.
Hey, real quick. You mentioned the stuff about Trump and all that stuff, and not being able to, all these ideas were done before, but. There's a thing called on the East Coast, they call it 9 yada out of Boston. It's a guy that comes in that takes a thing down to the last yard. Baseball, they call them closers. So he finishes the job that everybody else does. The other thing about the wall...
but those are all team sports, are they not?
Oh, those are all teams that have to deal with what the other guys did, don't they?
Huh? If it's a team sport... Like, that guy doesn't even get up to bat if everybody else strikes out. You know what I'm saying? Like, the point is, what kind of a jerk basketball or football or baseball player stands on the field and goes, I'm the only person worth having here, and none of you guys did anything until I got up to plate. Like, what is that?
That's a closer that's really good and really confident until they screw up.
Is it? Right. Okay. Like Barry Bonds kind of thing?
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those guys are like, I wouldn't go have dinner with them. They're kind of suck. But my money's on their team. Works for me.
Gotcha.
The other thing you said about the wall and stuff like that, that's not Trump's wall. That was what the border groups wanted. And if you really think all those guys are that dumb to the gate's open, let's go.
Did he sign off on it? I thought he was the closer.
For anybody to go through.
I thought he was the closer. He made the final decision on that design.
Absolutely.
There were 4 designs. He picked that one. That's my point.
He picked what the border guards gave him. Somebody had to.
There were 4 versions. He picked the one that doesn't have floodgates on the bottom of it and needs to be open now for months out of the year. Like, you just called him a closer, and then you basically said it's not his fault. Everybody else didn't get him up to bat. Like, you can't have it both ways. But go ahead, continue.
You just said that all the other gates do. I don't know that they do, and I don't think you do either.
All the other whats do?
If those 3 other gates have, if all the other 3 gates, if all the other 3 walls have the excuse for the gates for the flooding, yeah, then I'm wrong. All right? But I don't know that they do. I don't know that they don't.
Did they do?
That's what the
remember what Trump said about having an environmental, doing all kinds of environmental impact statements because he's built buildings? All those environmental impact statements, when you bother to actually make them, show whether or not the foundation of something will flood away if you've built it properly or not. That's part of the whole process. So you're right. He and his team may have come up with 4 different versions that still didn't do that. But that's on him. Is he not the president? Is this not his wall? Did he not spearhead this entire process where he was doing, I want 4 different versions, I'm going to go down there and knock on them? He's putting plates of his name on parts of the wall he never built. Come on.
That's the job of a closer. That's the job of a
God.
closer.
It's a plagiarist. That's the job of a plagiarist. That's what they do.
Not in this game, in the games of the country. I get what you're saying, and I'm just giving you the other side.
No, the other side would be that we should be able to move the wall further into Mexico or something like that, or that they would have paid for it and built it on their side so that the river didn't affect the wall. But they didn't, because even though he promised it. We are using defense dollars and money that's supposed to go to take care of families on bases, people who live and work as military professionals. That's what's paying for the wall.
Wait, I thought you were talking about a hole that leaks.
Oh, I am. Not only is it functionally bad, but the whole idea that Mexico was going to pay for it was a lie. And where he ended up getting the money from is morally vacuous. I mean, it's not a closer. That's 3 strikes and you're out as far as I'm concerned. But continue.
There's a lot of closers. There's a lot of closers out there that have bad game, bad form, bad morals, all the above.
Yeah, but they don't have nuke codes. I mean, I love your sports analogy, but this isn't a game. Like, what's the batting average on dealing with cancer clusters? What's the batting average on military response? I'm just saying it's a childish way of looking at it.
I don't think it's a childish way. It's a real way. And sometimes you got to take the good with the bad. I don't know anybody that's perfect. Do you?
The fallback perfection argument was ridiculous in high school, and it's even worse now. Like, I mean, literally, we're falling into Dumb and Dumber lines. Okay, Mr. Perfect, right? I'm not asking anybody to be perfect. I'm asking somebody to be decent and functional at the same time.
I hear you, and so am I. But I'm taking what I thought I could get. And I'll find out. Maybe, at some point he's going to be all wrong, or he's going to be all right, or he's going to be somewhere in the middle, and people will still be arguing about it.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm glad we straightened that part out. I appreciate the call. See, it wasn't as contentious as you thought it would be, I'm sure. Be well. Have a great day. So one of the things that, and again, that goes to kind of what I was talking about earlier. I do not need to dive into the vilification of another human being, like Hector, to disagree with them wholeheartedly on the fact that I believe that Donald Trump is not fit to sit in the office, does not live up to the standards that we should expect from our president, and that he is indicative of more the flawed, weaker presidents that we've had throughout the course of our history, morally weak. And I don't know why anybody would, and I'm sure it's getting harder and harder for people to buy his BS line. I mean, that's really a big part of it. That Trump supporters out there within the sound of my voice, the idea that you might push back on the idea that he was impeached in the House and he shouldn't have to present, there shouldn't have to be witnesses in the Senate trial, and that he doesn't have to do this because they're just trying to, overturn the will of the voters. They can say that all they want. I don't believe for a second that if they have a functioning brain, they really believe that. I think they're embarrassed, and I think they have every right to be. And most of them are defending him from a defensive posture. So this is, and this will be an ongoing thing with him through the election cycle. Do I think he's going to stay in office? No, I don't at this point. Do I think that the infighting amongst the Dems might result in the vote getting within the margin of error? That's what concerns me, because that's where the theft happens. That's where Bush v. Gore occurs. You have to keep it outside the margin of error in every poll that you can. And the minute it starts to dip down, you need to start volleyballing that candidate back up with some positive support, because you're letting the negative eat the positive and giving him room to say, well, it's a wash. And wouldn't you rather? Why would you change horses midstream in this economy? Never mind that they're flooding. We've got the largest deficit in the history of the country. But deficits don't matter. The president's a Republican. We'll be back. Heather says impeachment lasts forever. This is true. I mean, there's always that asterisk. And again, that goes towards what I was talking about with having a trial, is if it's not a legit trial, you cannot claim that you were exonerated. You cannot claim, well, I was found innocent in the Senate. They didn't look at anything. They wouldn't look at anything. You rigged the jury. That's how it's going to look in the history books. Period. All the arguments on, on radio and people on Twitter and all that kind of stuff from his supporters won't matter one lick, because in 50 years, the history of this moment will be that the Senate did not allow witnesses or documents in their trial of him. It was basically a sham trial, and it was the only thing that kept him in office, because they were afraid that if they actually showed the evidence, even the lockstep Republicans would start to bend. I don't think they would, but that's my personal opinion. It ultimately, the story is going to play out in the history books that Donald Trump was impeached, and the only reason he wasn't kicked out of office is because the Republicans formed a barrier wall of their own to protect him. I say this election, we win the Senate and the White House and then get rid of the Electoral College once for all. I'm with you. I think the Electoral College will be harder because I think it has to be ratified. Somebody might correct me on this, but I think it will require a constitutional amendment that will have to be ratified by the states. And there's a bunch of states that will not want to give up their power to do that. There's enough of them, population-wise. So. Yeah. Meanwhile, by the way, Trump is talking about cutting Social Security and Medicare. And by the way, what I heard immediately after that was a lot of Republicans, and we'll see online and whatnot, whether you can believe. I take it with a grain of salt. I'm going to go 40% troll. Yeah. But enough where it was obvious that they were saying at least he's strong enough to make the cuts to keep it solvent. That old argument. That's continuing. So, they're like, he is tough enough to make the cuts that are necessary to make sure that it goes to people who need it. That you'll hear that argument. Yeah, right, Hal. I think the sham trial might be the best for us in the long run. Exactly. Thank you, Hal Vicker. Yes, that is too. It has to be ratified by 38 states. I don't see that happening anytime soon. Bernie called it out as soon as his tax cuts for the rich happened. Called which part out? Sorry. I know there's a lot rolling through there. Yeah. Thanks. Look, Carl's taking a page out of Can't Stop Lion's book. Yeah, hit the like, folks. Give us a thumbs up. Thank you very much. Nice to have you guys amongst us. There's a little super chat button just below you if you want to hit that and support the show that way, or you can become a Patreon subscriber, which is greatly helpful. If you're watching on Twitch or whatever, I don't know how it works. It's points or bits or I don't know how it works. Little icons, faces. It's weird. And on Facebook, I don't know. You guys all operate in rubles, right? I don't know how Facebook, how you can doing this huge task for the rich. Yeah, Corey. So Bernie said they were doing this huge tax cut for the rich, and it is going to send us into a deficit-cutting SSI. Yeah, that's the point. That's the starve the beat stuff. Wow, 131. We've added 4 in the last couple of days. That's awesome. Yay! 500 is our goal. We're crawling towards it. Qu'on ait tout le France. Someday. Social Security and Medicare have their own trust fund, and the projection on when it will run out. Assume any input, just how long the fund will last. Well, that was the whole idea. We've been borrowing against it, though. That's where our deficit comes from. Sorry for being
back in 60, and we have one call right now.
Okay, cool. Okay. Let's see. Nice. Thank you guys for supporting the show. It helps immensely. It's great. I appreciate you guys as patrons. It means a lot. It's very sweet. We're going to be doing a Chicago in studio / public meetup. I think on the Madison, the day of the Madison show in Madison, Wisconsin. I'll be in studio in Chicago. Maybe we could find a location, do it out.
You're listening to the
We could all
House
carpool.
Radio program,
That'd be
Mega
cool.
Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of here.
How's that work for Chicago's folks, patrons? Yeah.
Video streaming at HalSparks.com.
I don't care for you if the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
So again, I started the last hour talking about how one of the problems that Democrats have currently is the fact that we are relying too much on people that we would otherwise despise. And especially, for God's sake, the John Boltons of the world. The idea that there's going to be some sort of salvation found in a person like John Bolton is insane. That's like using an anaconda as a flotation device. It's like your plane goes down in the Everglades and you're like, I'll just cling to this alligator until help arrives. There is a New York Times is reporting stuff from the Bolton manuscript that they have because the White House is now fighting putting this thing out and they think they're going to get a protracted legal argument. Never mind the fact that they already cleared it for publication months ago. So, like, if they didn't read it, it's their ass because they, whatever. But the quote is, Mr. Trump also repeatedly made national security decisions contrary to American interests, Mr. Bolton wrote, describing a pervasive sense of alarm among top advisors and the president's choices. America third. All this is to benefit him and his family after he leaves office. This is why he clamors for people like Putin and Kim Jong-un, and Erdogan, why he thinks these guys have got it made. Because these guys, while they are sitting in office running relatively violent, populist-leaning, anti-press campaigns and times in office, are socking away money that they are stealing from their country. They're living off the taxpayer to the tune of millions of dollars above their salary. Trump, just the idea that Trump donates his salary is one of the stories we heard. First of all, the man's charity had to get shut down because he was using it to pay legal bills and buy paintings of himself for his properties. They can no longer operate a charity in New York. So the idea that he cares about charity is similar to the belief that he somehow all he cares about is corruption. Because if he cared about corruption, what is Sergei Lavrov doing in the White House with no note takers and translators' notes being destroyed multiple times, where you're not meeting with Zelensky for that matter in the White House? Now, in the case, Bolton's writing describes a pervasive sense of alarm among top advisors. He expressed concern to others in the administration that the president was effectively granting favors to autocratic leaders like Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey and Xi Jinping of China. Putin is looking at Xi Jinping right now and going, how can I arrange that myself to be the ruler of Russia forever? I mean, he just dusted the entire Russian government under him and put in people that he can control. And he's funneling money out. Again, Putin makes, I think his salary is somewhere in the order of $140,000 US a year. The man is worth $200 billion. That is what Donald Trump is clamoring for. The idea that Trump gives his salary to charity is totally erased by the cost of his golf outings. His $400,000 a year salary versus the $23 million we've spent taking him golfing as a country at his own properties. where he forces the Secret Service and all government entities to pay retail for the space that they're using. I thought the whole point of getting a billionaire in there who doesn't need the money and who only cares about the country was that he doesn't need the money. Well, then why wouldn't he charge the Secret Service, the people who are there to save his life, the same rates they could get on Expedia? Why charge them top dollar? Every and we're talking monthly. We're talking and the entire family, by the way. I know people like somebody going something about in the chat room saying, but Air Force One for Michelle Obama to go shopping with their daughters. Okay, first of all, first black president's wife and daughters are a military target for every group that wants to bring the United States down. So the president's wife, I got bad news for you. If they're going to travel someplace, they're going to do it using Air Force One or Air Force Two or another military aircraft to get where they're going. And if they're going to take a vacation or they're going to go someplace, that's going to happen. That happens to every president's wife, every single time. What doesn't happen is $23 to $30 million for golfing every year at properties owned by the person who is taking the tax dollars. By the way, properties that would be failing economically if not for that infusion of money. They would all the accounting numbers point to the fact that Trump's the place where he wanted to have the G7 meeting and his Scottish property, for example, where he made all those pilots stay the night as they stopped when they flew through, would be underwater if not for infusions of government cash. There you go. And Plainsman in our, you gotta love Twitch. Hi, Twitch. You guys are beautiful over there, you gamer world. I wish I got to play with you guys more often. From Fast Check, the First Lady, her mother and children, this is Michelle Obama, did stay in Europe for a private vacation after the president completed an overseas trip on official business. They were, I guess, brought back later in Air Force One. However, no taxpayer money was used for the family's personal expenses. And so John Hawkins' idea that it's fine for Donald Trump to go on golfing trips if the Obamas could just take a plane and go shopping in France for a day. That's not what happened. That's not true. And the idea is doing it once for a day compared to literally funding your own properties with taxpayer money repeatedly when you do not have to. You can stay in the White House. Bush Jr. didn't charge people to stay on his ranch, insofar as I know. They set up like a holding facility for the Secret Service people that were there and the like, but he wasn't charging them rent at the highest level in the in 3 counties. So, anyways, that is. That's your closer for you. That's Donald Trump putting America first. So there you go. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. 773-763-9278 is our number. Paul Manafort after the break. Remember when Carter was forced to sell his peanut farm because people said he couldn't profit from it? Well, while president, yeah. Yeah, but I think we can all agree that Jimmy Carter is clearly just an evil, evil man. So he couldn't be left, if he had access to those peanuts, the damage he could have done. I was talking to John. Okay. The cost for staying at the Scottish property exceeded the AF per diem, so the air crews had to pay their own money to make up the difference. And they did not have a choice. They had to stay there. And who pays their salary? Still taxpayer dollars getting funneled into it. Literally military salaries forced to go into Donald Trump's pocket. What the hell is that? What's the point of having a billionaire who doesn't need the money if he so desperately needs the money that he's got to fleece our own airmen to get it?
We're back in 60, Hal.
Thank you. Talking about the forefathers and what they felt about impeachment. I think they'd be rolling over in their graves about the conflict of interest battle. The money is making out the taxpayers, and he goes off Trump property and we pay the bills. That summit at his hotel would have been unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, he literally would have happened if he simply didn't get away with it because of the brashness of how he announced it. Because they made a stink out of it, which is why I think they didn't think it was actually going to be able to happen. They were just testing the waters, and they were hoping that somebody would push back, and they would just get the free advertising for the space. Basically telling, foreign governments, if you want to get on my good side, stay down at that property. It needs the money. Buy out, floors of whole buildings.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I don't think we have any callers, do we, Devin? I forgot to check with you before that.
We have two currently.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, well, let's grab one real quick. And then I want to talk
First,
about...
we have Steve from the Gold Coast.
Oh, hey, Steve. Welcome, Steve. Good to hear from you.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. Kudos from Iowa. Well, there's a reason why nobody lives here. Heaven knows why we're having a caucus here.
Oh, right. Gotcha. Oh, you're calling from the hamburger phone in Iowa. Gotcha. Good to know. But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. But beyond that, I mean, in response to the previous caller, exactly where are we winning? We were promised all of these wins. On the international front, I mean, are we better off in terms of our stance with North Korea? Certainly not. I mean, we had a bunch of agreement with Iran. Instead, we're almost de facto war point with the Iranians. Where are we winning on that front? That's supposed to be the realm of the president. That's supposed to be his territory. Not that of Congress or the Supreme Court. This is where he's supposed to shine. So where are we shining in terms of the international community as compared to where we were under President Obama? Beyond that, as you rightfully point out, I mean, for a party that constantly yelled about deficits and the national debt, I mean, this is a booming economy. Why in heaven's name do we have a national debt and a deficit, the kinds of which we are seeing today? I mean, if that's the case, and that means that for the foreseeable future, we will always have a huge national deficit and debt because you'll never be able to pay it off because it's going to be high when economic times aren't very good, and it's going to be just as bad, if not worse, in boom times because that's where we are according to all the economic metrics.
Right. Well, there's definitely part of the rolling debt idea has been, part of sort of the American business model for a very long time. And it's no surprise that it kind of snuck into government the same way in that you're obviously back in the day when like house mortgages shifted to the point where you could get a lot more house if you just paid the house over a longer period of time. Once that shift happened, that became a normal practice for Americans. The idea of borrowing money to run the government grew much bigger too. There were these, in the times of kings of old, they would borrow money from other countries, but if they they had two options. They could pay it back in one lump sum whenever that person demanded it, and that usually meant stealing it directly from their own citizenry immediately. Or they could kill the other king and pretend it didn't exist, which is sort of what they're trying with borrowing from the Social Security Trust Fund. But I do believe as an economy we can pay down that debt over time, but we need you have to deal with it in many ways the way you deal with long-term climate solutions versus the short-term ones. There's short-term ones where you can buy back certain bonds that where the yield is too high and the interest rate will cost more over time, basically in a way refinancing some of the debt. And then you can
absolutely. You can restructure the debt, absolutely.
Right.
Except now, and setting aside the validity of the argument, I think it's a valid one. It's an act of hypocrisy on the part of the right who claims that this is untenable. They're not talking about
no, they don't care anymore.
They have always claimed. They've claimed that when a Democrat is conveniently in office and Democrats are in the House and the Senate in the majority, then it's a huge problem. It's an unsustainable, paradigm, and we've got to do something about it. It's going to bring down our country,
right.
Which is a lot of nonsense. But when a Republican is in office, then we just need to forget about it. And also, and to segue, Donald Trump, his Republican advisors, he had to face the fact last year. We need to sort of turn off the spigot. Sort of end this liquidity, this huge influx of liquidity that we were generating into the system in order to prop up the economy after the collapse of 2008. And as soon as that happened, you saw a slowdown. And in the wake of that slowdown, Donald Trump said, "Oh my God, no, we can't have that. We can't have a slowdown with me as president. You need to open up the spigot again, at least until I'm reelected."
Right.
And that's where we are today. So in other words, all of the philosophies that underpin the economic policies of the Republican Party, they decide to throw those out the window or just to have amnesia with regard to those policies, until Donald Trump is reelected. And then perhaps, then they'll begin to address it, or they'll wait for a Democrat to come in. And then they can blame them for a deficit.
Well, and there is no successor to the Donald Trump legacy. That's the other thing that they're afraid of. That's why this next 4 years is so important for a lot of Republicans too, because there is no direct transition. There are no charismatics on the on the brow of the hill, waiting to ride in and fill that gap in the emotional holes in Trump supporters' hearts. You know what I mean? There's no one. Mitt Romney's not going to do that. Certainly not Mike Pence. This idea that when he gets, if Trump got removed from office or resigned, that idea that we would still quote unquote have Pence, I've always fallen apart, because Pence does not excite the base. Never will. He'll serve a purpose, but he's even less interesting than any number of pick your milquetoast politician.
Right, and that's a very important point to make, because there are adults in the Republican Party still who recognize that there is no sort of legacy that Donald Trump can leave behind that someone else can pick up. That they realize that it's going to call for a fundamental reset of the Republican Party. They're going to have to start from ground zero, building up their party again, and trying to create a candidate that's in the mainstream that'll allow them to.
I don't see them doing that. I honest to God, I don't see them doing that. I feel like they have entrenched themselves in the barn burner attitude. There is enough of a rebellious tear it all down streak in the American electorate right now, which from the Bernie side to the MAGA hat folks, all the way across the board, there is this idea that throw the bums out, burn it all down, start from scratch. The whole system is destroyed. And I believe that's a cartoonish way of looking at things, and fundamentally immature. But right.
Democratic side. But that's what you're seeing on the Democratic side is this battle that goes on between the Bernieites and the people who want sort of the milquetoast Joe Biden's of the world, a return to normalcy. Mm-hmm. Now the question that's on the Democratic side. Now the question is, where are the Republicans? Because I don't see a Joe Biden alternative to Donald Trump on their side.
No, and that's why a lot of them are looking to you know, why they were hedging towards Biden, why the Delaney's of the world could stick in as long as they did, you know, was this idea that there would be this kind of like normalizing factor for a while. Like, I'll hold my nose and vote Democrat like I bumped over, you know, this fluctuating ruse of independence that goes on with a section of certain voters where, like, I'm not really, the two parties aren't my, you know, that storyline that they tell themselves, yet they vote almost lock, stock, and barrel with the same party every time, while you know, undergoing that the illusion of independence. There is absolutely a group of those that went from being Obama voters to being Trump voters, and will go back to somebody else if they feel like the ship won't capsize. That's what they're looking for. And you're going to see a lot of persuasion factor on that group, because here's the difference between that group and the rest of the independents or non-voting crowd out there, or even the youth vote for that matter, is that they're inconsistent, but they consistently vote. That group, that corded independent crowd, is sort of the strongest, I guess, challenge. I'll be generous, to electoral strength by either party. Is their sort of vacillation on this.
And keep in mind that, you know, it's also a function of where you stand relative to popularity and approval ratings. I mean, Donald Trump is about 41% in terms of overall approval rating in this country, and he just squeaked by with 77,000 votes across 3 states that gave him the election in 2016. And since then, he has lost a significant amount of support. So you cannot, you know, in a booming economy like this, your numbers should be well into.
That's what I said last week, Steve. I said that on Twitter. I was like, do you know how awful you have to be as a human being to have a stock market like this and have the disapproval numbers that he has? Do you know anybody? Exactly. And here's the thing: when Obama was in office, the jobs numbers turning around, the stock market tripling, all that stuff, the president has nothing to do with it. That's business individualism. Americans make that happen on the ground. Government doesn't help at all. The best they can do is get out of the way. And then Donald Trump gets in, it's his stock market, it's his unemployment rate. By the way, and the unemployment rate was fake when Obama was in, as it turned around. Now it's real. Even Sean Spicer joked about that at the podium. Like, they totally believe the president, drives the
old adage of, you know, being born on third base and acting like you hit a home run. That's what happened to Donald Trump. When you walk in to an economy that's already booming and then claim that you hit a home run. No, the economy was at third base heading for home, and you're going to claim that you're responsible for a home run. You were not responsible for.
And the arc of it has been going up. Like, look at the economic arc. Look at the unemployment numbers. All of it is all but steady, even post 2008. And there's a huge conversation going on. I'm sure you're aware of it, Steve, if you pay attention to such things. That even the economics theory that's going on Wall Street and in other areas is that we may be beyond the era of boom and bust, simply because the boom and bust economic concept was built on a market and a population of about 3 billion people. That those ideas, those economic ideas, were founded in a world where half the human beings that exist now existed. And now that there's this many people in the world, and that many mouths to feed, and that much, you know, that many clothes to wear, and that many houses to live in, and cars to drive, all those kind of things, that the factor of a country with 330 million people producing product never technically has to dip unless it is sabotaged. And arguably, the tech bubble was that, and certainly 2008 was that. That these were not naturally occurring recessions or whatever. These were bad acts. This was a bank robbery. This is as if we were all counting on being able to take out our money out of a bank one day. And unlike in, you know, the crash in the 30s, where people went to the bank and because the system was failing, there was no money in the banks. 2008 was much more like you went to the bank to get your to get cash out, and it had just been robbed and there was no money in it. It wasn't because the system had failed. It was because there was a robbery. Credit default swaps, leveraging, stacked real estate deals were the cause of the 2008 crash. We got to take a break, Steve. I appreciate you calling. We're all going to chip in and get you a better phone one day. I swear to God, we need a Skype number or something. We'll figure it out. You're awesome. I appreciate the call. We'll be back right after this. Julie. Youth vote is an oxymoron. Unfortunately, that is statistically the fact. The interesting thing about, I guess it applies to older voters to some degree, but the idea that you mature into a thing where you regularly vote is pretty normal in life. But the youth vote being, reliable, for example, I mean, just look at the no versus depends, no pun intended, on the Bernie voters, so whether they will vote for the Dem no matter who they are. The vote blue no matter who streak in Biden and Warren and Klobuchar and all these is strong. In the Biden world, in the Bernie world, it is not. And that has a lot to do, quite frankly, with the volume of his supporters that are young. And they're not reliable voters to start with anyways. Recently you've seen tides of voters, but if you look on YouTube, for example, you're not going to see a ton of a liberal wave or a progressive wave in the youth of the country necessarily. It's fairly even split as well. I was one of those independents for years, but I voted for one independent for president and 2 Republicans for governor, and that was it, right? So you were an Eno, an independent in name only? Hi, Julie. Just vote. Yeah, well, you'd think. Vote.org, people. Vote.org. Make sure you're registered. Make sure your friends are registered. Make sure that, within 2 months of the actual election, we're going to do a big push to make sure everybody's back on. That's one of the big things I'm going to be pushing on the Sexy Liberal tour as well. Is make sure that everybody leaves there with marching orders as far as, GOTV. Get out the vote.
All right, Hal, we're back in 60, and phone lines are full.
Of course. Do we have the the roll-in trolls trying to get in at the end, maybe? But I'm sure there's. We'll just do them in order.
One guy may be a troll. All he said is he wants to speak to Hal. I'm like, okay. And every time I ask him, he's like, I just want to speak to Hal. I'm like, all right, dude, chill. I'll get you to Hal.
That might not be a troll. It might just be doesn't know what the show is about, wants to talk to me about other stuff. Completely reasonable.
So, Hal, I was baking a birthday cake yesterday, and I have some questions on frosting for you.
Hey, I've got the answers. First of all, you're going to want to add some cream cheese. Standard, and one of the easiest ways you can add. Do you really want to get into this, or are you just spitballing, Devin? Because I can really solve this for you.
We got 15 seconds here, but okay. I'm cracking up. So maybe when you're in studio, we can talk this.
Yeah. I'll the cake I bring in will have a little bit of mixed cream cheese in there or whatever. Sometimes you can take off the shelf frosting and make it more palatable just by adding we'll talk about it later.
I'm Dick Kay from Back on the Beat, and here is the mega worldwide radio program with Hal Sparks.
Thanks. Tune in for Dick Kay's show Beat Back after this hour. He'll be on with beating back this street with Dick Kay. I don't know. I guess word order doesn't really matter.
Back on the beat with Dick Kay.
Oh, it's okay. Get beat on the back with Dick Kay. Right. You got it. All right. I'm kidding because he always reverses my. Never mind. All right. Let's take our callers though.
All right. Next we have Pat out in Chicago.
Cool. Hey, Pat.
Good morning. Good afternoon. I think February 4th is Ronald Reagan's birthday. I could be wrong on that. But
Okay.
It's somewhat ironic that when they have this vote on Wednesday, that essentially Trump will have become a dictator light by virtue of the fact that he will have taken over the Congress, he will have taken over the judiciary, he'll have taken over much of the media, and he's in control of the industrial titans, which is not unlike what Hitler, Franco, and Mussolini did back in the 1930s and 40s.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and by the way, what's from a Republican standpoint, what's not to like? I mean, they've salivated at this very idea. Look at the number of them that took NRA trips to Russia to like wander around over there in effectively what is a white ethno state with no gay pride marches. Like the idea that they could have a version of that over here, even a light version of it, which is exactly what he's setting up, is incredibly appealing to all Republicans. In office, I will say, the current ones in office. I do not think that applies to every Republican out there, the ones who are flipping out right now and busting their finger dialing the station. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that while it's true about comedy, it's true about treating each other as we'd want to be treated. On the other hand, I think we start needing to use accurate terms as to what's going on here. It's like these people who continue to embrace the Confederacy. In my opinion, they are traitors to the United States of America, and they should be referred to as traitors.
I can work with that.
There's this there's this wiggle room that they all, because we're all trying to be polite, or we're all trying to win them back, or we're all trying to. Some of these people are never going to be won back, and instead, what they're doing is undermining our democracy. And they're an affront to what this country is supposed to stand for. And it's frightening. It's for someone like myself, I'm going to turn 65 this coming week. And I could never have believed that I would live in a time that my parents lived in the last century.
Hey, you don't get to skip. Nobody gets to skip history. Yeah. No, by the way, the Confederate flag, which most people wave around, by the way, is the Confederate navel jack, which sounds worse than it is, I suppose. And it was a never used naval flag. They just liked it. It was never used as Confederate flag until after the war or whatever by people who were pushing a specifically racist ideology. So this idea that it's heritage isn't even true in terms of which flag you're using. If you were putting up the Confederate flag that they actually used, I almost might try to give you a benefit of the doubt, but that's not what's being used. Secondly, they certainly were on the losing team, and they were fighting for the wrong thing. And I'm sure if you said to them, I feel towards the Confederate flag the way the people of, Qatar feel about the ISIS flag, that you would get a different response from them. But yeah, no, we are going. Oh, and to answer your question, by the way, Reagan was born February 6th, and he was which will be the day after the vote, so that which is indicative, I think, of something. Yeah.
Well, we're grateful to you and all of CPT hosts, and we just hope you keep doing what you're doing. And we're subscribing to your podcast because we believe we need you, and very much more than ever, because we don't have Fox News, and we don't have NBC News, and we don't have ABC News and the rest of them. And you're up against, it's like David and Goliath, the way things are going at the moment.
This is true. This is true. However sketchy the David and Goliath story is, ultimately. We'll talk about that in a post show one day. But I appreciate that more than you even know, and I thank you very much. And feel free to call in again anytime. It's nice to have you come in and voice that. Thanks. Let me grab another caller, because I think, we have enough time for one more caller, I think, in this block.
All right, next we got Roosevelt out and clearing.
Cool. Hey, Roosevelt.
Hey, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. Go ahead.
What did you think about Elizabeth Warren challenging Judge Roberts? Did you hear about that?
Yes. Basically being the tying vote in that. It didn't happen. I appreciate where she was going in this. It didn't end up being a flat tie because they had the votes. If Lamar Alexander had not voted, if any of them had voted present or anything, it might have come up. The problem is there is no technical, I mean, that in and of itself would have to go before the Supreme Court in my estimation. That's the curious part, because I don't know that there's any set law on whether they can break a tie as the judge in charge of the trial. It's a curious thing. I appreciate that where she went, and it certainly puts the weight of that decision in his lap, which I think where it should be. But go ahead.
And while we're on the subject of Judge Roberts, how can a Supreme Court judge hold court where there's no witnesses and there's no documents coming from the White House and everything is blocked?
Yeah, how do you call it court? How do you actually?
Yeah, how do you call it court?
Right. You don't, and that's why I said, like, historically, that's how it's going to go down. That is absolutely how it's going to go down in history. Everyone is going to know going forward, as of Wednesday, when they vote to acquit him with no witnesses and no call for documents in the trial they were responsible for. And by the way, we're going to start right up again in the House. I have no doubt that they're going to start calling witnesses, and then all the other stuff that's been, waiting in the wings, as far as, because it's not like you're short on crime in this White House.
Right, and hell, I'm sorry. To your point, between now and the elections in November, he's going to do a lot more interfering, a lot more blocking, a lot more. Put it this way: everything he touches turns into what. And this is going to be no different. He can't leave things alone. He's going to do himself in, like he's been doing. Now, back to the Senate. I think it's better that it's going to happen this way, with no witnesses, with no documents, because if there had been witnesses, he would have said, "See, I was clear."
Exactly.
Look,
it would have given him the room to do it. That was my argument. That was my argument for having witnesses. If he was, again, I do that whole, am I evil Metallica version of things. Like, how do you look at it from the perspective of the person that you were up against? How could he actually win in this circumstance and benefit himself? And one of it was the Republicans who were going to vote to acquit him were always there, no matter what they hemmed and hawed about. Yep. Even Mitt Romney was going to vote to acquit him based on this, because they would just disagree about it, no matter who the witnesses were, no matter what the documents said. They don't care. So he could have had a sham trial with witnesses and documents and gotten away with it and still patted himself on the back.
Right. And the proof is this. Remember how far we've come. Remember that Pelosi, the squad wanted him impeached. Remember, Elizabeth wanted him impeached, Elizabeth Warren. So we come that far. Remember what Pelosi said. The country's not with this anymore yet. So we've advanced. As more evidence keeps on coming up, more blocking of witnesses, more subpoenas being blocked, the polls are changing. Look, 82%, I believe, 82% of the 82% of the independents, I believe, were in favor of witness. Exactly, in favor of witness. I believe there was 70% of Republicans and 90% of Democrats.
Right.
So as this thing keeps on evolving, and to your point, there's going to be more in the House of Representatives, and more things are going to come to light, such as the book.
And I also think, I think that also feeds the argument that that 70% of Republicans who want witnesses are the waiting in the wings ones you can reach. That's who we're talking about.
Right,
and that number has grown since Trump has been in office, because it used to be, it was probably 60% or less. But as he's done what he's done and acted how he's acted, that has increased. And largely that is Republican women that have, made that shift, that they were either soft on whether or not he should be president or abjectly supported him. And they have fallen back because of the example that they are setting for their children, for their families, for their country. And they're waking up to that fact. Not that there haven't been men that have made that transition too, because there absolutely have. But that's probably the bulk of that number. And if you can reach those folks by not painting them into a moral corner and saying, you are that, I have put you into a prison of my own perception of your motives, and you have to stay there with no off-ramp, no way of, redeeming yourself, then we fall into like kind of blasphemy talk where, we scream at blasphemers and they are forever shunned from the village. And instead of going, you know what, 70% of your people actually are on my side, whether they are or not, is a better argument to fight with.
Yeah. And to your point, I don't care. This is what I always say. I don't care what political view you have. If you're a mother, whether you're white, black, or Latino, or whatever, you're going to care for your children, and you're not going to want your kids going to war. And we almost went to the war with Iran with the assassination of that, what was it, sergeant or whatever that guy was, his title was.
Yeah, Soleimani, the head of the Republican, or the Royal Guard, yeah. RCBG, I forget what the numbers are, the letters, yeah.
So between now and November, he's going to play the scare tactic again, because that's a Republican playbook. They're always going to get you on the brink of being scared and being afraid. And I'm your father figure. I'm the guy that could save you. I'm the guy. I'm me. So that's it.
I appreciate it. Absolutely. And we got to take a break, but I will say that this has now become the idiot's version of the national security president. Because it's no longer about like, well, Russia's got nukes and we've got nukes, and we have to have somebody stable enough not to pull the trigger too early, but also not afraid to pull it if it needs to be pulled, and those kind of arguments from the 50s, from like the mid 60s to the mid 80s that we had. We've now gotten just into, there's a boogie monster in your closet and I'm your dad and I will scare it off, which is, if that's what you need in a president, that's something you got to fix in yourself. We'll be back. Hi, chat room. You guys are wonderful, by the way. What's up, Flang Doodle? Good to see you. And Amigo, I saw you in there too. Where are you? I'd like to see Mike Bloomberg offer Bolton a large advance on book purchases in exchange for Bolton to provide an interview with Rachel Maddow during this. Holy smokes. Yeah, just buy the book out. Steyer could do it. I love how the fact that Bloomberg is now running has almost made it like Steyer's a normal candidate now. Is it because of the volume of billions that he has? Bolton needs to start talking now. Agree, but he won't. Let's see. Has anyone seen the research on Obama to Trump voters? About 9.2% voters went to Trump in 2016. It's about 4.5 million. Depending on 2008, 2012 average, are averaging 8 to 12, way more than Stein's count. Yeah, but the Stein stuff was in 3 strategic states was the issue too. And they were literally, that small number made the difference. This is why every vote counts. That's why,
we're back in 60, 2 callers left.
Cool. You do not give ground. So who's that? Sorry, DC, what's that? I dated Wayne and told him, Wayne, for years now, we left a huge black hole in progressive talk on radio. By damn shame, it's the management they did, the station had huge potential. He makes me feel safe, said a female Trump supporter. Right. Again, I think there's a realization, and it depends on how you react to it. We'll talk about it in a second. 378 people watching, though. Hi. Give us a thumbs up.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending. Yay!
378 people in the chat room operating around. Give it a thumbs up, folks. And if you hate me and hate everything I say, give me a thumbs down too, because engagement counts no matter which direction. So even the thumbs downs help me. As a matter of fact, right now, if you haven't given me a thumbs down and you want to, give me a thumbs down. If in fact you wish you could not wear pants on the bus when you're riding around the city. Just so I know from the thumbs down who you are. Okay, so we got 2 more callers. Let's grab them by the end of the hour. It's been caller heavy today, and it's kind of nice. Who do we have, Devin?
First, we have Ed out in Aurora.
Cool. Hey, Ed. Welcome. Go ahead. Ed, you there? Do we have Ed? Hello? Wilbur? Ed, are you there? I hear you. I hear somebody. Is he on hold? Is he waiting? Is he... Okay, we'll put Ed back on hold, and we'll take whoever else was after Ed, and see if we'll get back to you, Ed. You're hearing this delay.
Next we have Jeremy out in New Jersey.
Cool. Hey, Jeremy.
Hi.
Hi. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hello.
Did you hear that Donald Trump's bar was destroyed?
Sorry, say that again.
Did you hear that Donald Trump's bar was destroyed?
His what was destroyed?
Donald Trump's star.
His star was destroyed?
Yeah, Donald Trump's star was destroyed on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Oh, yeah. People, they've had that happen a couple of times. Yeah. Yeah, they replaced it and then they moved it. Yes, I heard that. That was like a year ago. But what's your thoughts on it? You have thoughts on that? Other than...
No, I just wanted to tell you that.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Thanks for the call. We'll try and get Ed back on. Ed, are you there? Do we have Ed? Oh, okay. We lost Ed. Sorry. The ghost of Ed. So sad. All right. Well, that's all right. In the post show, we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff. I have a correction to make already in one episode. I don't, some shows will go back later and make corrections. Rachel's pretty good at it, I think. I've even seen the Young Turks do it in a video they don't post. They just let sit and don't tweet out. If they make a mistake, they'll apologize and then bury the video under 1,000 other videos and not draw any attention to it. Not me. No, even in the very same show, if I make a mistake, I'll try and do my best to correct it. I said $23 million a year was the cost of Donald Trump's golf outings. I'm off by a factor of 10. It's actually, $340 million since he became president. Over $110 million average a year that we are paying for Donald Trump to go golfing, and all of that money goes into his properties. Just be abundantly clear. Because the Secret Service, government employees, all those folks, they don't get fed on Mar-a-Lago property because they are there to save his life, unless they bring MREs, I suppose. They buy food on site or have it brought in or are catered by the Mar-a-Lago thing, which they pay for. This and all of his properties, let me say this again, unequivocally, would be going the way of Trump Casino if it wasn't for this infusion of cash. One of the reasons he golfs so much is because these properties need money. They're dumps. And after he leaves office, they'll be sold. Either quickly, he'll probably keep Mar-a-Lago and dump the rest as some sort of, making it his own Graceland, or sell it to and just live someplace else. But none of them are going to survive based on the idea that they are functioning golf resorts frequented by people of means, which is what they were initially designed for. They are running off of the government teat, as it were. So sorry, I apologize for saying it was only $23 million a year that we were spending on Trump's golf outings. I think that was the Obama number for travel entirely for him. Yeah. So, yeah, the total for Obama of outings over the course of 8 years was shy of $80 million, which is less than $10 million a year over the course of it. For all you, they took a plane to France just to go shopping. Less than $80 million. And Trump alone has hit in, let's see, 120 weeks hit 200. So let's see. Trump's golf trips were exclusively been to his properties. One of the outings of 193 times that the president went golfing, one was to the President's Cup. 2 were in Japan golfing. 3 were at Trump's Ireland course. 190 of 193 outings were at Trump's golf properties. Literally, the 1 President's Cup and the 2 in Japan were the 2 times he golfed where he didn't own the place. 20 flights to Bedminster, New Jersey to visit Trump's course. 24 flights to Mar-a-Lago over 2.5 years. At his current pace, Trump will visit his golf properties about 310 times. And if reelected, it'll be well over 610, which means that Obama's 8-year budget for outings and vacations and extracurricular activities, $80 million over, less than $80 million over 8 years. Donald Trump over 8 years, $640 million if he stays in office. The GAO says that just 4 of Trump's trips to Mar-a-Lago cost $13.6 million apiece. But that does not include all of the total expenditures by government. So they're not even saying the parts that the staff had to pay with their own money. That like this is an underreporting of that number. These are magic Trump numbers. So there you go. They do not include certain classified cost information. Oh, so they're not even including how much it costs the Secret Service to stay there, but we do know that they're paying full price. But they just don't include the number in the actual thing. And they were not able to identify meals and incidental expenses, if any, that the government employees are forced to pay at Mar-a-Lago because they can't leave while they're there working. So they are a trapped audience. It is effectively airport level cost. Remember when, I think, was it AOC that tweeted out, like, why should a bagel cost that much in the airport? Besides the fact that you get a bagel from the corner store, there's like 2 people involved, 2 groups involved, the bakery and the place selling it. If they're not one in the same place, but usually 4 individuals, whereas there's 3 levels of security going into an airport, and that's what you're paying for. The president imposes Mar-a-Lago fees on the Secret Service and everybody else who's around him, the U.S. Marshals, the FBI, his advisors, everyone around him. They pay airport prices just so that they can, because they can't leave. And that money goes into Donald Trump's pocket because he's a closer, because he's a billionaire who doesn't need the money. He just runs because he loves America. If you want more of that sarcasm, there'll be a post show. Hang out afterwards. If not, stay tuned for Dick K, or go to infotainmentwars.com and listen to the show. Don't forget to support the show by becoming a Patreon subscriber. Greatly appreciate that. And I will see you guys, especially the Patreon subscribers, for special meet and greet stuff on the Sexy Liberal shows. If you can't just subscribe for the month you're going. You have to be a subscriber. Otherwise, they get mad at me. But we'll talk about that in the post show. Take care. We'll see you guys next week after the acquittal. Thanks so much, Devin.
All right,
Appreciate it. Yeah.
No problem.
Cheers.
See you next week.
Okay. And we're to sign off on this guy. Peace out, everybody. Hanging up. Hi, chat room. Good to see you. I think we're alone now. All right. And let's see. Notifications. There we go. The Twitter sphere has been a lot of fun. I never got to the coronavirus kind of stuff that I wanted to mention too much, but I did drop in a little bit. Let's see. In there is, let's see. It's not good, kids. A lot of people are saying, well, the flu kills a lot more people. The flu has killed a lot more people. This is what's called a novel coronavirus, which means it's brand new. They don't know what the death arc on it is. That's the concern, and how easily it spreads. So there's a thing in disease spreading called the R0 number, and forgive me if I'm a little fast and loose with the details, but the important thing is that you need to know is that if it's got an R0 number of 1, that means if I see you and I'm contagious, you will catch it, and then once you get to the contagious phase, you will pass it on to one other person. It has a 1-to-1 ratio, so that at the end of 10 passings, me to you, you to somebody else, you to them to somebody else, there's 10 passings, 10 people have it. I'm going to see if I can find the graph for it. So, gauging the infectious thing. So let's see if there's so it's a contact rate is, if it's 2, that means by the end of 10 people passing it on, 20 people get it, because they spread it to 2 people each time, and it pops out. So a single infected individual meets 1 person, they infect 1 person. The disease is so narrowly focused that only 1 person of the people they meet will get it. If it's got a 2, that means 2 of the people that they have run into will catch it and pass it. If it's got a 3, on and on and on. At the 10 point, you've got a difference of 10 people or 20 people or 30 people. It's not considered that bad. But the difference, after 20 people, 20 exposures, goes from it doesn't go, the 10 goes to 20, that's on an R0 of 1, that's 20 people. On an R0 of 2, it's something like 160. I'm playing fast and loose with the math, but you'll get it. Let me see if I can get a picture of the graph and put it up. But the idea is that as it goes up, as it becomes, if it's more infectious in that regard, it's somewhere in the order if you increase by 2.1 or 2.2 as far as an R0, because it's not usually a direct 1 to direct 2. It's and because they're not sure if it can pass, it looks like it can be passed, but they're not sure 100% during asymptomatic periods. If it's got an R0 of 2.2, for example, versus just an R0 of 2, after 20 passings, you get into the zone of 2 million people have it. And those 2 million people will infect 2 people in the next passing. See what I'm saying? That's what's concerning about this particular virus. The flu, which everyone says kills a lot more people, has an R0 closer to 1. Because we have what's called herd immunity. Some people walking around are just immune to it. Whatever the flu is, they're just not going to get it. Certain respiratory flus, unless it's egregious, it's not going to affect you. And unless your immune system is horribly compromised, or you're injured, or you have a baseline infection to start with, those kind of things, like a lot of factors. But in general, it's not going to cascade. The flu isn't going to cascade through the populace with a death rate that goes with it, certainly. The flu is not, singularly contagious. Multiple people get it and multiple people pass it to one person. It's not a triangular spread. That's the problem. And in terms of coronavirus, we don't have honest measurement coming out of China right now. But the fact that they've shut down a city of, quote, 50 million people is not promising. So, what you can do to stop lower the R naught of almost any disease is wash your hands, keep hand sanitizer around when you're shaking hands with a bunch of people. Listen to me, I know what I'm talking about. And clean common surfaces, kitchens, bathrooms, that kind of stuff. If anybody's sick in the house, obviously if your kid's got the flu, you're not going to isolate yourself from them, but keep them home from school. And you might want to call in sick from work if that's what it is. If it's just the flu, you won't have to worry about it so much. But if there's any chance that that's what this is, there you go. Corona with a twist of Lyme's disease. Oh, God. All the people I know came to work sick because they could not afford time off, and then everyone was sick. Yeah, that is effectively the biggest argument from a business standpoint. I'm going to talk about a pro-business standpoint, why people should get paid sick leave so they don't come to work and shut the whole place down. How many left the region since then? Well, that's obviously part of the issue. I also have my legit concerns that because most of the people who end up getting the coronavirus already have either compromised immune systems in terms of diabetics tend to get it a lot easier. Men of ill health, old men specifically, or people with lung-related jobs. That's why there's a lot of Chinese miners and factory workers who are getting it. And then, of course, children who haven't built up an immunity against these kind of pathogens, who get effectively the lung flooding that goes along with pneumonia from one of these kind of diseases. The reason that they're more susceptible, beyond the obvious, is that the governments in the countries where this, how do I put this gently? The governments where the countries where this is happening have nothing to gain from more people being alive. That a certain culling that happens due to disease is seen as neutral by a good portion of humans and is looked on positively by some. That's it. So, thank you, Amos. I appreciate that. Thank you for upping your patronage to 20. That's great. Thank you. Bless you guys. There's a special gift coming your way. I'm just saying. Ask restaurants if they have health care for employees. If no, leave or don't make the reservation. I don't need to get sick for lunch. That's a great point. That's a great way. And talk about a great way to advocate for paid sick leave is call a business. And when you're asking their hours, even just in general, even if you intend to go, even maybe you're calling Lowe's to see if they're open, just a quick question. Do your employees get paid sick leave? Because I'm reticent to come there if somebody's sick. And yeah, that's a great point. That's a good general strategy to use all over the place. Seriously, isn't this like the beginning of every zombie apocalypse book or show you've ever seen? Yeah, but that's more because if you reverse engineer most governmental responses to an illness that are legit and how you would handle a real crisis like this if you were an adult who actually gave a damn about the office you oversaw, and you took that because you're a horror writer, and you mix that with the plot of Jaws, which is we don't want to shut down the beach, it's the prime tourist season. That's the opening of the movie you're going to get. And it's also how people tend to drift, in that situation. Speaking of drift, hi Drift Glass, welcome. You put the what? The bamboo charcoals out in the wind, or at least most of the outers, such clacked out there. Oh, I don't know what that is. All right. On a more lighter note, I'm going to a concert on my birthday. Well, all right. Happy birthday early. I hope it's a good one. On a very lighter note, I'm going to see Danko Jones next Thursday at the Viper Room. I missed him the last 2 times he was in LA, and it's been stuck in my craw. So I'm actually modifying travel ever so slightly just so I can stay and see him. I mean, I have stuff to do that day, and certainly stuff I could do the next morning. So it's but that's always true no matter what. There's a hard sell. Driftglass is here, absolutely. Professional Left podcast is worth a listen. I recommend you guys subscribing, listen to those folks. I'd love to come back on if they'd have me. That was super fun. And I appreciate everybody in my chat room who went over there and gave the show a listen and who was so gracious and supportive of their stuff. And I recommend that as a behavior point. Hal, about to pass 1 million views on YouTube. Roll right on. Me or you? Yes, the coronavirus is named because of the shape of the virus itself. It has a corona like the sun, which comes from crown. And what makes it such an issue is it's kind of like a burr or a thistle that sticks to your pants leg when you walk through a field. It has spines on all sides of it, and therefore it can attach itself to cells much more easily. It doesn't have to fit specifically, and have a much more distinct survival rate. It has evolved essentially in a world full of locks to be covered in keys, if that makes any sense. Where exactly is your craw? If you don't know, I'm not pointing it out. This is a family show. I worked with your mom in public health. Everything was yes, because my mom's smart and a great nurse. I worked with your mom in public health. Everything was about washing hands and covering your mouth and hand sanitizer dispensers everywhere. Yeah, they're not messing about. People are disgusting. Coronavirus outbreak. What is an RO and why is it so important? January 30th, 2020. 809. Yeah, R0. Yeah, the R not. Yeah. Oh, I see what you're writing there. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not afraid to go there. My guilty pleasure of my Chemical Romance in September. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, is Blue Gal on or not? I know, yeah. Back on Twitter jail currently. What did you do, Driftglass? How did you get in Twitter jail? That's hysterical. I'm sure it was completely justified. What do you say it on here? I want to know. What was the thing? We got inquiring minds got to know. What was the thing that got you broomed? And by the way, I don't need headphones anymore. Julie forgot to tell me, but appreciate it. By the way, am I getting this on the right side? Yeah. It's pretty cool to be able to use. I'm completely wireless these days with my stuff. So we're moving to. Thanks to our patrons, we're moving to I'm completely wireless in terms of how the show works or whatever. I'm able to have guests now as well. We're going to be, the Wonky Donk is going to go through a transition because of some good news. People on the Patreon will find that out sooner than everybody else. I can't quite discuss it yet, but I will, and it's pretty cool. But it will involve a lot of cool new guests coming on too. There you go. That's an interesting question. Okay, so Wilbur Ross, I don't know if you guys saw this. Wilbur Ross said that the virus will drive jobs back to the United States. Okay, there's no indication that the jobs lost by China because of deaths, God forbid, but also because of people, lowering their desire to go to China for business will actually happen. Or that if it does, they won't go to Taiwan or Indonesia or Thailand or some of the other states that have been bucking for China's business for a very long time. And as a matter of fact, there's this whole conspiracy theory that's going on over there that the CIA dropped the coronavirus into China to mess with them. Considering how their dude's just playing with CRISPR Cas9 the gene editing tools in China now nonstop. It's not surprising you're going to see more of these kind of diseases coming out of China just from that monkeying around. But the Israelis, the Indonesians, the Taiwanese, they're all going to try and get that piece of business. And so Axe says, how is this affecting your travel show, Hal? So obviously, we were scheduled to go back in at the end of November, beginning of December last year, and we didn't because of I had scheduling conflicts, and there was a lot of flux going on. Didn't happen. Obviously, right now that's on hold. The question becomes, do we pick it back up? I have a cat on my lap now, if you can't see the tail. Do we pick up where we left off after this clears? And I would say yes. I think there's probably we're probably on a 6 to 7 month hiatus with the show because of that. But then afterwards, China's going to be desperate for people to feel safe going back to the country, and the show becomes even more important than it was from a travel perspective. If we're buying Ivanka's garments produced in China, should we soak them in bleach before wearing them? No. If you notice, they will have a vague smell of formaldehyde, simply because of how they're shipped. Hi, Chud. Hello. Yeah, I know. Hello. You want to say hi? You want to say hi, Chud? You want to say hi, Megan? You want to say hi, Megan? Yeah. She's snotty. She's got a good purr. Hi. Yeah. And yes, Wilbur Ross is an idiot. This is true. When I was sent to jail, America was a democracy. When I got out, it will be a monarchy. Oh, I see. Yes, wash your hands more than normal. Yeah, and yeah, Chud is our is the feral. She's my feral cat. And thank you, Can't Stop Lying, as always, for the boostering that goes on during the thing. Thank you so much. Oh, are you gonna fall over? You okay? Yeah. Yeah, I know. My Chud says hi to your Chud. Aw. DNA sequence is live on sites and was hacked. Oh, good. Walkacha. Yeah, right. Yeah. She just needed pets, so she just jumped up here to get some pets. Feral means you let him out? No, feral means Chud was a wild cat. She lived under my house when we discovered her, and I rescued her and brought her inside, made her a house cat because she was barely surviving. So I got her some shots, got her cleaned up. Yeah, there we go. Hi. Oh, you're good, kitty. She's a good kitty. Hello. Yeah. She's very cute. Hey, hello, Portugal. Good to see you. Send us your cat details, and we'll make her the Pro Left Pod Internet Kitty of the Week. Okay. I insist. Yeah. Chud's a salvage wreck. She's great. I can't stand all the... Hold on. I can't stand all the racism and xenophobia people are displaying to Asian people because of this virus coming out of China. I think it's tempered. I think it's not as bad as it was during SARS, certainly. I mean, that's going to be expected. Yeah. I'm sorry. Has there been any pet coronaviruses yet? Yeah, it's kind of the pet rock version. You hear it's sort of a mix. Hey, David. Hola, ¿cómo está? Didn't it start with pigs? It did not. Well, they don't know for sure. But they think it started they definitely think it started in a wet market. And they don't know whether it's avian, like the other ones, or if it, what was bats were an option, snakes were an option, and fish were an option. They don't know. Did you see about Bloomberg's TV ad? I haven't seen it, It's good that the coronavirus has pushed the windmill cancer off our radar. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Although Trump will probably at a rally say that the coronavirus is caused by windmills from the sound, which, when it's not killing bald eagles, is spreading coronavirus to everybody. But again, the are not. Should you getting down? Oh, there she goes. All right. Oh, and the amount of hair on my legs. This is just yeah. That's yeah. Bloomberg and Steyer should buy Fox News. Oh, that would be a certain. But then the ratings would drop, and not because they would change the programming, and not because it will, it would become less popular with the right. It's because they would no longer be owned by the guy who also owns the Nielsen ratings company and can make up his own numbers. Seeing a lot of Bloomberg ads. Yeah, he's not short of funds. That's for damn sure. And again, even if he loses, which he won't, there's no way Bloomberg becomes the nominee. No way. Does coronavirus defeat Trump, deranged syndrome? Yeah, they're one and the same. Sticky roll, yeah. If Trump gets that virus, Pence will be president. Yeah, well, he won't. He's not going to get it. Believe me. That's, the president is cared for medically. See the quick, hey, I just want to run over and get a head start on my physical. Meanwhile, can you check why I may have started slurring my words and fallen over in a meeting? Can Restream bots see our YouTube chat? Restream if we answer back to them? Yes. Ew. Yeah, but who makes Trump hamburgers? That's a good question. And is there oh my Lord. By the way, if you guys can see, the Teespring store is live down below. I have totally freaking, because my hair is getting long and I'm not cutting it. So it's straight up like flock of seagulls right now. It's pretty hysterical, which is okay because I'm Tuesday at the Jam. I'm singing a Rick Springfield song, so that kind of era of hair isn't bad. I need to grow a mullet. About time. Hasn't Bloomberg said he will support? Yes, he will. Yeah, Plainsman. Everybody has, except Sanders, but I think the idea is that we're supposed to assume he will. What are Bloomberg's and Steyer's numbers? They're inconsequential, below 5% at this point. Let's see, current Democratic polling, the aggregate. Let's see, this is Real Clear Politics. Let's see, NBC has Sanders up by 1. IBP Tip has Biden plus 7. Washington has Sanders plus 5. California Democratic Party has Sanders at plus 14. Pennsylvania Democratic primary has Biden at plus 7. LA Times, USC says Biden by 16. Yeah, so these individual polls from the parties themselves show you where they are in terms of what voters are actually going to say. Biden is, let's see, Iowa, Biden's up 2 for the Democratic Presidential Caucus. From Monmouth, Iowa State University is doing Sanders +5. The Florida has Biden +24. And Sanders in single digits, and Bloomberg at 17. That's interesting. That's your old folks vote, people. That's how that works out. Yeah. Economist YouGov gives Biden +2. Hill Harris poll has Biden +12. That's as of Wednesday. And I'm going backwards a little bit for when they actually carry them. Quinnipiac has Biden +5, and Berkeley for the California Democratic primary has Sanders +6 for just that primary. So yeah. Yeah, so those are the current kind of back and forths. Yeah, it's all, I mean, Biden and Sanders are within the margin of error for both of them in the NBC News poll. It's 1 point. But Warren has dropped to 15. All those numbers went to Sanders, in theory. And Bloomberg has come in taking 9 from, I don't know, Bennett and Patrick. He's got 9 points in there. Although this is again, it becomes the wider the field, the thinner the spread of the numbers. Q is giving 5 on Biden. Yeah. Yeah. And the LA Times, yeah. It's funny because LA Times versus the California Democratic primary. So NPR QED hired by the California Democratic primary voters. In the primary, Sanders is +14 in California. In LA Times nationwide national poll, Biden is +16. And I think it has to do with a lot, like in the Pennsylvania Democratic presidential primary, Franklin Marshall has Biden +7. Warren in second place, Sanders in 15. So in the big, like, uber blue states, Sanders is doing very well. And in Iowa and New Hampshire, but everywhere else, not so much. So that's the current state of affairs. Bless you. Bloomberg, because of his literally, I mean, it's amazing, but just the volume of like, he's already at 9 in the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, 8 in the IBD tip poll, 12 in the Washington State one, where Sanders is at 26, which is crazy. Like, what a weird mix, for him to pop in there and get, like, in all these areas, he's charting above people who've been running the entire time in the polling, not just, it's one thing in terms of if you're looking at how he, like awareness polls, like do you know somebody because he's spending a ton of money? So that would make sense, but the fact that, like, in polling he's the choice of a bunch, it's kind of interesting. Okay, Bill Kristol just tweeted, "We're all Democrats now." I just think it's I just saw that anyone making above 130 won't need to pay any more Social Security tax. We don't have a progressive tax in Social Security anyways. I think they've been pushing back to make sure that doesn't happen. Here's an idea how to do a Discord chat during the next debate. I think that's a great idea for it. Although I might have to de-mic some people, wink, wink, during the so we can hear anything. Apologies if anyone's been talking to me, doing food prep and working out a bit while in here as well. We'll absolutely glad to have you. Can't stop lying, and I think it's great that you're cooking and working out. It's a good thing. I encourage that behavior. Who's Donald Davenport? He's my character on Lab Rats. I like Yang qualified for the debate. He brings a sense of realism. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he'll make it either, but I do think he'll end up working in whoever's White House is there. Like I said, maybe not if it's Sanders. That's the hard part. I can't tell. That seems to be the whole, the wild card in all this. Is he doesn't seem to be, big tenting the people around him. Like, everybody else kind of talks intermittently, but... Yeah. Yeah, basically, that's the way it's always been. It doesn't get bigger the more money you make. And there's lots of reasons for that, not the least of which is that we didn't want it to be a point of, outsized contribution where people who are rich their whole lives, if they, they end up having to use their Social Security, they're not getting an influx like it's a savings account at the expense of other people. Everybody gets the same payout in general. So everybody pays only up to the cap. Anyone is better than Tulsi. That may be the case. Except for Donald Trump, maybe. Although there's some indistinguishables. It's not as if you like Bernie anyway. Yeah, but I could totally dislike the guy, but if he's the Democratic nominee, I'm going to vote for him for president. No question. It's what sets me apart from apparently 47% of his supporters. Bernie's setting new records every day in voter popularity, and they want to stop him. He's definitely got a strong base, but I don't know that he's setting records every day in voter popularity. And I don't know who's quote unquote trying to stop him. Yeah, 85% voted for Hillary. But that's not what this group is saying this time. That's what I'm saying in the poll that came up. Bernie's a bit like Jesus, and I like him, but I can't stand his pants. In that he's Jewish, I suppose. For Social Security insurance, I meant raise the wage salary cap on tax from 110 to 200 and be solvent for a while. I agree with that idea. I think you can raise it higher than it currently is. Maybe Bernie has Asperger's. I don't know. I wouldn't presume that or whatever, but I do think it was funny that the same day the video came out of Hillary saying nobody likes him, came out the same day that he was giving, I guess, an interview to, I want to say it wasn't New York Times, it was like Des Moines Register was, I'll have to look it up, but the Des Moines Register, Bernie, happy birthday. Oh. Yeah. See, yeah. Yeah, it was New York Times. But he said, I don't tolerate BS terribly well in his New York Times editorial board interview. And he was making the I don't tolerate BS very well in relation to people saying people have said that you don't say happy birthday or you don't engage with your fellow people, and I just don't know why that wishing somebody a happy birthday is like heavy lifting. Thanks, Polly. There's the party. It was New York Times. Bernie said he didn't work with niceties. Yeah. I found that UK Bernie was pretty brilliant as a candidate. I think they could have picked someone more exciting. The Labour Party is in trouble because of Sadiq Khan. That's definitely true. Bernie is about policies. Okay. But policies that affect and interact with people, human beings. And if you can't build bridges unless someone agrees with you on policy, it's not helpful. Let's see. I just got asked on another podcast. That's lovely. Change last year if you're really Oh, nice. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting requests from some folks to get me on their shows. That happens because of my other life beyond the world of punditry. It's heavy lifting when you keep track of huge numbers of people, so it's to send them birthday greetings. Yeah, he's just talking about saying stuff, I think. Looking forward to Amy McGrath beating McConnell. Ugh, from your lips to God's ears. Hal Hunter becomes the next Benghazi, thus Daddy gets thrown into a perpetual meat grinder. Why do you say Bloomberg won't be the nominee? He can outspend Trump. I just don't see him igniting a big enough swath of voters in the time allotted. I mean, he entered really late. That money is not going to, buy him into a win in any of these states, so he won't have the delegates ultimately. He's too far behind the 8 ball, I think. And, I mean, reason enough not necessarily to sign on to somebody if they can't decide they're going to run for president until this late in the game. I mean, I understand people playing footsie with it or being coy in the first couple of months and not getting too ahead of their skis, but you have to, you have to understand that if you're going to be president, I got to know that long term you're making plans for your life. Yeah, exactly, Billy. He has no national base. There's nothing. There's a section of people who are like, oh, we could have our own kind of Trump as far as financially pushing back. Him and Stiers have this a similar kind of group. So as far as Medicare for All goes, just about every study comparing the U.S. to healthcare system with others shows the U.S. gets far less for its money than others. That's also because the U.S., through our CDC and our NIH, supplies a good portion of the world with the research and development. We spend a lot more money on care in this country that gets bought secondhand by these other countries. It's not 100% that you and I pay $800 for an aspirin, and in the Netherlands they pay $600. It's not quite that simple a one-to-one. Yes, Mitch McConnell should be a huge priority in the election cycle. Hey, good morning, Anthony. All shows have to come to an end. This is true eventually. Right? Hallie's got one hell of a TV ad tomorrow during the Super Bowl. Oh, Bloomberg does? We'll see. I mean, it could be effective, or it could be his, it could end up being his Dean scream in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that a big enough chunk of the electorate is ready for another New Yorker in that regard. That's so entrenched in New York. Trump made a statement saying that if Kentucky gets a Democratic governor, it will hurt his chances for re-election. Do you agree? It certainly doesn't help. I mean, obviously, it's the senatorial seats that really matter the most. Getting rid of Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell would really have a tremendous effect. And a lot of times, there's a reason why governors run for Senate seats after the fact, not the other way around. A lot of times, the outsized power of being a senator is far higher. You could argue that by getting a Republican governor or a Democratic governor, that the voter of Kentucky might feel a need to balance it with Republicans in other positions of power. That happens a lot too. So the fact that it's Democratic might lean that they will, that Democratic voters and Democratic-leaning voters may seem to solve their problem by voting for a Republican in other offices. So I don't think it's as cut and dry as that. Could we lure Rand Paul back to his neighbor's yard? I don't think he'll need any help, carpetbagger. Hospitals charge across the board to make up for those who don't have insurance. Right, which is part of what the individual mandate was about, which is part of what Trump was trying to, why he wants to get rid of it, so that it undermines the actual payment schedule that evens out the costs. They don't have a solution. They just don't like Obama's not allowed to have a win is effectively what it is. How they have on Amazon a 30-day food supply that's kosher called Fork. It seems too close to pork to me. I don't know that if it's kosher, they can call it whatever they want, I suppose. Yes. Yeah, that's who I was talking about, James. That since Bashir got in, that doesn't necessarily raise the chances of a Democrat becoming a senator. It could arguably lower it simply by that, unfortunate, whipsaw activity of the U.S. voter writ large in Kentucky. Absolutely, Steve G. I'm glad you saw the Danko Jones reference. He's very slept on in the United States. The fact that I can even see him in the Viper Room is embarrassing, I think, because he deserves much. Like they're doing arenas in Europe and in Canada, and that's our respect for Canadian music. I gave to the hey, Hal, you are a success in Brazil. Well, all right. I should come down there then. I've never been. Hello, Brazil. Good to see you. I'll make it down there one day. I think it's a great idea. I think I need to go down there and sing some Duran Duran, and it'll be a good time. Sparks, the GOP does not want people to get free care because it's their fault that they are sick and poor, and they're just enforcing God's punishment on them. That's the prosperity gospel version of health care that the Republicans believe in. at my most generous, I would say that what they believe is that, this is what they're selling anyways, is that giving people free healthcare is a ticket to driving up the number of like ill health due to lifestyle diseases, because if you can overburden the system and not, exercise and eat right to better your life, then you will. That people themselves are inherently flawed and will take advantage of the system. The thing I would push back on is that, have you seen where we are currently? I think the body positivity movement is a net positive in general, but it didn't start until the majority of Americans were overweight and obese. It's a marketing strategy that the majority of people in the country are overweight, and so all the marketing to that crowd is standard branding and economics. It's not because all these companies suddenly found Jesus or started caring about people. And in the case of the healthcare system, the insurance is always pushed back. Like if you smoke or if you have the markers of ill health related to diet, your price is going to go up. That's going to be a standard part of any system like that, because people like that are going to require more care. The Republicans ironically believe somehow that people are going to get lazy and sick if we have Medicare for all, and because they don't believe that people have a sense of self-worth and dignity and will take care of themselves. Meanwhile, the private system that they tout so fervently is overrun with those kind of issues. Prosperity gospel is utter BS. If one reads the Gospels, Jesus beat the crap out of wealthy people with his statements. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly... Now, here's the debate about the driving, quote-unquote, the moneylenders from the temple. It became a norm in societies, largely because changing money on the street was dangerous. You could get killed. With the Romans about feeling like they controlled everything, if you carried around money, they could take it from you and you had no recourse. You did it in the temple where people at least thought God was watching. It's one of the reasons why our banks still kind of look like those old temples, why they share that size. So driving the moneylenders out of the temple, while from a puritanical point of view is understandable, viewing that it is a house of worship, not a place where business transactions happen. The reasons those business transactions moved in there was because those people were getting mugged and killed when they were just doing it out on the street. That's true. And Evernum, the universal health care that those countries have isn't 100%, public. It is a good portion of it. I think the Netherlands is largely private. Well, it might be 100%. Netherlands universal care, if I'm not mistaken, private. Yeah, so the Netherlands system is much closer to the Affordable Care Act. In the Netherlands, for example, which has universal health care, mandatory private insurance. You must have private insurance. The average cost of an emergency room visit is 256 euros, about $300 US. Average cost of a doctor's visit is 47 euros, about $55 US. There are 1,900 pharmacies, 93 hospitals. 99% of the public is covered. All private insurance, not a public option, not a Medicare for all system at all. But universal coverage. And the way that they it kind of balances it, because everybody has to have it, the overall cost goes down. And the Netherlands, let's see, okay. let's see, is Groningen, Friesland, Drenthe, Orgersvijal, Flevoland, Gelderland, Utrecht, North Holland, South Holland, Zeeland, North Brabant, and Limburg. All of those areas, and I'm fairly certain that Holland has a similar system, but I will look it up to make sure right now. Yeah, so the Netherlands has a private-public bridge. So anyone living and working in the Netherlands has to have insurance, with or without coverage, from a Dutch provider. This is interesting. So let's see. That's the Netherlands. So where the heck is that? Way down here. Go back here. What are you doing? Yeah. Yeah, it's basically that Holland is only different from the Netherlands in that they supplement with a version of a public care. They have a Medicare-like system. Isn't it subsidized if you are under a certain income? Oh, wait, no, they also have a higher minimum wage so people can afford that. Yeah. Jesus actually hung out with the rich and poor alike. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus were probably pretty well off. They had some best friends. Joseph Arimathea also owned a private tomb. Yep. Jesus got his own private tomb as well, which shows that his family was wealthy. Yeah, check out the Pro-Left Podcast, guys. It's proleftpodcast.com. What does mandatory private insurance mean? How does that work? Okay, so mandatory private insurance is means that you as a private citizen must get insurance from a company that provides insurance, a business, inside the country. So I think they must all be internal to the country, much like our in-state kind of ideas. You can't buy insurance across state lines. It's got to be within the country. So it's got to be from the insurance. One of those companies are regulated to the point of where they have a set standard of how much they will pay out for stuff, and therefore the hospitals and medical choices that you can make are limited to, the prices are limited based on what they're actually worth, and they don't get jacked up because somebody else didn't pay for their stuff, so you're paying that fee in yours, which is what we have largely over here. And it is mandatory, meaning that you legally must have it. If you don't have it, I think there's if you're impoverished or homeless or whatever, the facilities have to take care of you up to a certain point. But there's a fine and taxation and all that kind of stuff that go with it. It's much like the Affordable Care Act's mandate. Yeah, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Is everybody on board? Cool. I'm aware that is why I said universal healthcare, because they finance those systems differently by country. In contrast, Norway, Germany, UK, for example. Exactly. Yeah, no, Evernote, I wasn't saying you didn't know that. I was explaining that to everybody else. Just to clarify. Kristen Jones experienced getting a horrible intestinal infection while she was in Europe. She thought she would have to declare bankruptcy. I will do just that. Health insurance destroys the middle class and poor. Well, it hasn't in those other countries. It's how it's applied. That's why the PBS special sticker around the world is still a good watch, because it has a good FAQ on how different countries achieve universal health care on the page for that episode. Yeah. Holland is a group of regions in Netherlands. Yeah. But it has separate governance insofar as that's what I was looking at for how its laws were attached. the Holland district, whatever the sub-district of the country in the Netherlands is called, as its own country, they have a mandatory system like the one in Netherlands, but they have a public option within it. The Netherlands has no such rule. Jesus went to Glastonbury with Joseph of Arimathea. Good to know. If insurance was sold across state lines, every insurer would relocate to Delaware, where they have the fewest consumer protections. Yeah, I mean, there would be a bum rush to get there. The question is, from a market standpoint, would other insurance companies spring up with saying we're not in Delaware because we don't cheat you, and then cause an exodus? Yes, they were trying to scuttle the same as we have here with the tax fee if you don't have insurance. It was supposed to work in conjunction with a public option, but the GOP erased that part. Yeah, in an attempt to chew it up from the inside. Jesus was Jewish, so was Joseph. Joseph definitely was. The question is, was Jesus the first Christian or the last Jew? That idea. That's always the chicken and egg in as far as that storyline, because he didn't follow the Judaic line, or the belief that you had to be of the Judaic line to go into heaven, that anybody could come to God through him, that whole thing. Hugs in live. I'm assuming that's I'm going to take that hug as for me, just because I could use one. Stephanie Miller talked about Hal might be on her podcast episode. Oh yeah, I get a lot of people talk about me. If they're smart, they want an interesting point of conversation. Obamacare was a bridge. I agree. Wealth in and of itself isn't evil. It's the greed and selfish pursuit and bad intentions that corrupt the money. Yeah, I mean, and the funny thing of our focus on billionaires used to be our focus on millionaires, used to be our focus on landowners, period. The scale is going up, so, and what our standards are for being middle class have gone up as well, as far as life expectancy and, available medical products and services, personal products and services, every other thing that goes along with it. Regarding the impeachment proceedings, with the vote coming up this Wednesday, what do you think the chances are they will win the vote to proceed with an impeachment trial? You think I know there are grounds for impeachment. He was impeached. I've seen the evidence. I watched the entire House impeachment investigation / trial. And yeah, I have no question that he deserves impeachment. It's the removal of office part that they'll question. Now, do I think he should be removed from office? Yeah. Do I think he will be? No. Ask Rick Scott about Medicare fraud. He took the fifth 75 times. Yeah, that'll be good. He's apparently wanting to run for president. Good point, Alex, except we know that corporations are inherently incapable of such self-regulation. Well, no, there's what they call market regulation as well. I give the Starbucks example a lot of times. That Starbucks was using coffee at one point that they were just buying from South America willy-nilly to meet demand. And then it was discovered that a lot of it was from conflict regions, and that was the workers weren't treated well, and that that indigenous growers were getting pushed out in favor for these mass growers who were burning the Amazon. And a bunch of protesters showed up at Starbucks offices and said, we're going to, and start complaining about this. And there was a meeting of the Starbucks executives, and I'm not sure who it was. I think it was, what's his name, who actually ran the joint. But somebody at the company said, because they were working on ways to how to message and push back and deal with all this stuff. And what they ultimately came to was, why bother? Why push back? We didn't know about this. It's not who we are as as people. And they announced that day, from this point on, we use fair trade coffee. It is possible. It's even probable with some companies, especially service-based companies. It's your chemical companies and your fossil fuel industry that need the most regulation and will fix themselves. And even the like the home market, like banks and regulators and all that kind of stuff. Like as far as lending goes, I think they need tight reins as well. But I don't think there's an inherent evil in people who are just in business to make stuff and sell stuff. Julie says the Netherlands is awesome. I could live there. And Julie would know because she's been everywhere. So jealous. Jesus was mixed species. Well, technically he wasn't human at all. So he was wearing a human body like a shirt. Need non-profit banks to Steyer's actually is that has one. I mean, it depends on what the bank is for. I think most like savings and loan kind of situations should be non-profit banks. That would be very helpful. Or minor profit, say 2% max in as far as lending, but they should only be able to lend to individuals and not businesses. That kind of thing. I mean, it's a thicker conversation. But yeah. Concentration of wealth is the problem, not the wealth itself. Well, you could argue that let's say the opioid crisis is a result of spread wealth over poverty. If you watch The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia, you see these people who are on SSI getting money from the government, using oxycodone, crushing it up and snorting it, that they got from a prescription that was paid for by their SSI. That would be the broad swath version of corrupt wealth. Instead of taking the money and spending it on your own health and well-being, that this money is viewed as free money, and therefore they spend it on stuff that will temporarily make themselves feel good, which is arguably what the problem with big companies is. Nonprofit banks, insurance, healthcare, all that stuff. Agreed, especially in the world of healthcare. It depends on the question you always come up against is, what are the profits for and what do they go to? Are we just talking about the cost of running the place? Meaning, are we setting fees on a doctor regardless of how much it costs them to, for their student loans, for example? Do we start forgiving student loans if you want to become a doctor or a nurse? Do you not have to, should there be medical schools that are free, paid for top dollar by the U.S. taxpayer? There's an argument to be made there. The AMA, the American Medical Institute, American Medical Association, they limit the number, they throttle the number of doctors that enter the market to keep the fees higher for doctors who are practicing, partly because of malpractice insurance and partly because of the fees that they have to, the cost of their education and the interest rate on that, and also the fact that they need more R&R in theory than other people who just work at a factory job. If you're cutting people open or you're dealing with cancerous stuff, you're going to need a comfort cushion that's higher than other people. You need some self-care funds. So in that theory, the idea though that the organizations themselves should be nonprofit, I'm 100% fine with. Public auction is actually pro-free market. How do you ask? Because the freepers claim private insurance does everything cheaper and better than the government, so this would let them prove it. Agree. That's hence the both Biden and the fallback that Warren and Sanders have done, which is exactly the Biden plan, by the way. Exactly the Biden plan. Is they call it a phase in, but the only difference in what they call it from what Biden's doing is that he doesn't call it a phase in because if it doesn't work, people still will have the option. But the idea behind both is that it will become so superior, seen as so superior by the person using it, and people who are paying for private insurance will see, I'm not getting higher quality just because I'm paying to a private company. I'm going to move to the public option and stay there, and then eventually it dwarfs and puts everybody out of business. That's the standard, you know, that Biden's using, and what Clinton ultimately proposed as well, and what the ACA was largely about when it started, which is one of the reasons, you know, which is one of the reasons why the ACA had that in the very beginning of it. When is coffee cost ever coming back down? Like, not ever? Stop thinking Republicans are going to save U.S. Yeah, they're not. Sam says, I'm drinking iced coffee that my girlfriend brought me lovingly at the beginning of the show. I don't understand why we pay premiums to cover healthcare expenses and still get medical bills. Largely because the companies in their fine print or what have you put a standard in place for what they will pay for and what they won't pay for. Stuff is outside their, you know, the purview of what they think is a covered element, which is what the ACA also sought to try and fix, which is why you got rid of what were called junk policies. The hell is, if I make you have mandatory insurance like they do in the Netherlands to make sure that the cost is evenly spread over everybody, but in that it is not, it doesn't cover emergency room visits or the ambulance ride, or you can get the ambulance ride, but you have to pay out of pocket for all the stuff on the ambulance that they use on you: lactated ringers, pain medication, sutures, whatever they're, you know, having to do on the, you know, in the bus. What the hell is the point? You don't have insurance, and if you skip out on those costs because you can't afford it, those costs go into the system again and raise everybody's prices. That was the whole point. How off the subject a bit. Do you think a stronger FCC and tighter reins on identifying news apart from the infotainment might be something to focus on? Every kid's show I see has IE up in the corner to tell me it's education and information. Why not a label for opinion, news, analysis, etc.? I mean, I think the networks try to do it by putting the opinion shows during a certain hour, and, you know, and early morning and nighttime, and that they separate their regular news programs on broadcast television from the Hannitys of the world. That said, I think there's tightening of that law would be a great idea. I mean, I would put opinion on this entire show. In theory, how did my graphic get all bumped off? What happened there? What's going on? What kind of madness is this? This is a fine mess I've gotten myself into. But that, yeah. So the for-profit health companies have more money to play the stock market. I don't know that they play the stock market in those terms. I don't know what you mean by play the stock market. Because the theory would be that that if you're a pharmaceutical company or you're a healthcare company, that your profits, anything you don't need to run, go in bonuses for the people who've made the place run better or more functional or more profitable, and then money for R&D and money for advertising, like an extra push outside the normal awareness advertising that you would do. So that's the question. Ever did you see the Marco Flow Dark Water about DuPont and Teflon? They say that remnants of Teflon will be in our bodies forever. Yeah, that's why I think the name conservative is ridiculous. Because what are they conserving? Where's all this? I want clean water. I want the clean air. And then they just roll back all this stuff. Let's eliminate all the private companies that know nothing about health. Eliminate all profit. So if all health companies are public, how does an inventive company like a startup working in the health realm who wants to disrupt care, make it better, figured out a way to do something superior, how do they begin to function and show that their system works before the government takes them on? It's kind of where does that fit in that system? If you're not allowed to make a profit in health, which I don't know how you legally do that anyways, but let's say there could be a limit on the standard, cost versus care, money, and especially with insurance, because you're not actually coming up with the there is no R&D in insurance. Right here, Al. Jesus wearing the human body like a shirt. Oh, it's true. Oh, yeah. Mama, tell him how that MFer tried to punch you at church. Yeah, that's classic. Is Trump still snorting Adderall? Yes. Insofar as I know. Hashtag, just kidding, probably not. There was a documentary some years ago, Connie called Addicted to Plastic. They tested the blood of native Canadian and found plastic in his blood. Spending money, not making money is what drives the economy. The problem is the ultra-rich don't spend their money, they hoard it. Sort of. Usually they end up buying other businesses. The worst part of the money hoarding issue that you find is sort of the hedge fund and Bain Capital kind of methodology, which is take a completely functional company that's got a profit, and you want their profit, but without any of the startup stuff, kind of like I was talking about the health startups. Buy them, and then either sell them off for parts when it was a functional company, leading to layoffs and all that other stuff, but because the stuff is worth more to you than the hassle of running the joint. Well, I guess the other area is them creating conglomerations of different industries they have no business in, and then even if they were intending on running stuff well, scuttling it. Highest paid employee in Medicare or Medicaid is around $150,000, right? Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate that. Thank you. From someone, whoops. Just a reminder to everybody. Patreon.com. We have a goal of 500 for the year. More special goodies coming on the way. Just saying. Hi, Rob. From someone who has a degree and 50 years of study in biblical hermeneutics, your understanding of the nature of Christ and other biblical matters is in error. How so? That Jesus was wearing a human like a skin suit, or like a shirt? Is that? But that's my own personal interpretation of what it means to be a God walking on earth in human form. And the idea that the moneylenders, quote unquote, gathered to do business in the Bible, in the temples, is not unique to the Middle East or Judaica or Greek and Roman societies. It was a safety thing. When and where did Michigan get lead in the water? Okay, so the Flint thing happened when they switched from, I think, river water to lake water, or vice versa. Either way, the acidity of the water is different as a pH than the water that had been running through it, and that acidity dissolved the plastic lining that's inside the pipes, which are welded with lead, and have a certain amount of lead content. That lining was there to keep the lead out of the water. Once you switched, the pH difference had not been accounted for, eliminated that lining, and suddenly the level of lead in the water spiked. That's when. Yes, Amos said it a lot quicker than I do, from aging pipes. But it wasn't just the aging of the pipes. It was the fact that they switched water sources and the pH level was different. Someone in here is saying the whole state has lead in all the water. No. They have the potential for it. There's a bunch of cities where the count is way higher because they did the exact same thing. All that piping should have been upgraded as part of the national infrastructure. That I completely agree on. If you wanted to be the legacy president, whoever the next president is, if you want to have a better legacy than almost anyone else, the removal of lead and the abatement of lead in this country would lower violent crime by 7% at a bare minimum and lead to millions of people being born without birth defects, and it would lower the drug use in the country. So yes, GOP does not do infrastructure for poor people. Well, the interesting thing though is that this goes to the interaction thing. This is what, it's like when you find a Republican who's against public schools. Like, why should I be paying for some idiot to learn? Blah, 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 and public schools are a waste. And yeah. But if you're on the road with someone who can't read because you couldn't be bothered to pay your taxes in that regard, then if they cross the center line because they didn't understand the manual, or they don't see the sign and stop and kill you and your family, that's going to put a dent in your profits, let's just say. So there you go. Plus, they didn't use additives needed to keep the pipes from corroding. Exactly. Our infrastructure sucks. If Thug 45 crowd wanted to be remembered as good, they'd put money into infrastructure like the Germans. I don't know if that's the group you want to line up behind. It's all the more reason to do serious reform. Yeah. Yeah. This is a great, there you go, Can't Stop Lying. Put this up there. Berkeley Filters. There you go. This is not a sponsor. That's true. I'm just adding this up here at the top. I'm going to put these up here since I'm sitting so low in my chair right now. BerkeleyFilters.com. I mean, you should filter your water or get it from a source as far as your drinking water. Anyways. And the majority of those who bitch about paying for someone else's child to go to school went to public schools themselves. Go figure. Oh yeah, and invariably these folks go, public schools suck. They just create robots. And I'm like, so you're a robot then? I guess, is that what you're saying? And that's what you're telling me? You seem to have no problem calling out the government and wearing your tinfoil hat and screaming at the top of your lungs and about what an individual you are and how sovereign citizen you should be allowed to be and how taxation is theft in all of its forms and all that. You were brought up in a public school. Why don't you think like everybody else? Because you're special? I don't think so. Only money in politics gave us idiots that thought it would be switch the drinking water to a source car companies have labeled as too corrosive. Well, if you're trying to bring a budget down and you're not aware because you don't care of the ramifications. I mean, you may be doing this because you're trying to skim the system and hide that money or whatever, or because people told you so. But most of those kind of choices are to tighten the budget around other stuff. Yeah. Oh man, we've been going. This has been a good long one. Thanks, guys. Happy Black History Month, by the way, as well. It is now the 1st. And let's see. I'm going to roll back through some stuff just to check in on the Twitter feed with you guys. Couple of things. I'll just post this and pop this back up because we're doing our post show. Might as well hang out with these good folks. Everybody, especially Julie, you have to listen to Lost in Germany by King's X. I tweeted that out. The Bob Seska tweeted out this chart that they had on MSNBC that was from Channel 7 and Emerson College, that 87% of Biden supporters will vote for the Dem no matter who, 90% of Elizabeth Warren's, 86% of Pete Buttigieg's, 78% of Michael Bloomberg said yes. 50% of Andrew Yang's said no, or said yes, and 53%. And 53% of Bernie Sanders followers said yes. So 47% of Sanders followers said no or depends. 42, and that's an interesting split. In the depends part, it was 31% of Bernie Sanders people. So they were like, 31% of them were like, it depends. We'll see. 16% said no, absolutely not. In the Andrew Yang category, 42% said no. So they're even more entrenched than the Sanders crowd in that regard. By the way, the Rashida Tlaib going along with a boo of Hillary Clinton. I do not accept her apology. I was not impressed. Republicans do that whole I'm sorry if anybody's feelings were hurt when I called that person what I think they should be called. It was one of those. And she waited, and there was 4 tweets deep, and she waited for the third one to join in. So to mention Hillary and by name, and still never says that they're worthwhile, that it was a worthwhile apology. Never says I'm sorry. Just said, well, I'm sorry. It was I'm sorry I let how I felt about her get away from it. How is that not a fake apology? Let's see. Well, I'll open up a can of worms by talking about that whole Brad Takei's tweet about the dog and the kid. You guys can read that end of it. The New York Times posting their headline for that went out on Friday was Republicans block witnesses in impeachment trial. Vote ends push by Democrats to bolster their case against Trump. Is that what it does? Because from my estimation, New York Times, that vote creates a protection wall around Donald Trump from the truth seeping into the conversation. It's not that poor Democrats haven't lived up to this, system, and somehow it's their fault for not winning it. Mitt Romney's not going to CPAC. What a shock, considering it's basically somewhere between Alex Jones Sandy Hook truthers and a Ben Shapiro book party. Let's see. Yeah. and then we went through the whole thing on there about them voting to not allow witnesses. I certainly opened up my can of worms about talking about those Antifa morons calling for protests and jumping fares and all that kind of stuff, and want no cops in the MTA. It's just like, it's gross. Look, you can't be against dark money in politics, but be for someone wearing a mask and busting a store window to get their policy position heard. What's the difference? What is the difference? And if you say, well, one group's good and the other group's bad, how do you know? Both are hiding. Both are not, there's no guarantee that they're citizens, they have the right to vote, that they actually want the stuff they want, that they aren't just agent provocateurs ginning up an argument. I don't buy it. I think that's far enough to go back. Yeah, cool. All right, now I'll go back into the chat with you guys. We got about 5 minutes. So last questions, anything? Those Antifa provocateurs. Yeah, I mean, I have the same problem with Antifa that I have with people on Twitter with anonymous, and we've met in person, so I know you are who you say you are. But until I see them in person, and I know that this is genuinely their account and that they're genuinely a person, understand I take everything with a grain of salt, and I am not convinced that they mean well or that they are honest players in this. I often only use their arguments or their support as sounding boards or pushback for stuff that I want, not because I genuinely believe that their argument is legit at all. And Wes is saying Antifa are Republicans in disguise. I would argue, here's what I think they are. I think Antifa is the hyper left-wing, somewhere in the zone of sovereign citizen, libertarian version of those open carry guys. That the left that supports Antifa seems to me feel about Antifa the same way that right-wing people feel about open carry gun activists. That they appreciate the intimidation factor created by this group. How do you know the Iowa caucus is different this election? How so? By closed ballot, you mean? When WTO was in Chicago, CPD met with protest leaders and even gave some of them radios. They agreed that violence did not help anyone. And there still was. In the U.S., the Picard show is only available through CBS All Access. Everywhere else, it's Amazon. Oh, I see. Senate has to get back to not passing laws and installing unbiased. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so subscribe. We got a couple minutes left. Thank you guys so much. 1 minute. All right. Thank you guys for hanging around after the show. I greatly appreciate it. I'm going to be posting the Sexy Liberal dates on my website at howsparks.com in the calendar section this weekend. I think we're getting cleared dates for that, but I know Madison and Seattle are locked in for sure, as is Columbus, Miami, and San Francisco are all getting locked this week, if they haven't already. So if you're in any of those areas, look forward to a Sexy Liberal show coming your way, which will be very exciting. I will be there with bags of merch and blue patches for the Blue Patch Brigade who haven't received theirs. If I meet you in person, you haven't gotten yours, I'm going to hand it to you. As well as some special perks for long-term Patreons. People who've been a Patreon for 3 months or longer. I can't give free tickets to people who, or put them on my part of the list for of my Patreon subscribers if it's the month of the show, because it's too easy to game the system. But if you've been around for a while, your seat is locked. Consider it done. So fear not. And never got an audio from you. Oh, you need audio, right? Or do you need video? Either way, well, I'll look. Yeah. I will. Yes. And I would love to bring us to Atlanta. Fingers crossed. That would be awesome. It would be nice to have Stacey Abrams come up on stage with us. That would be fantastic. Okay, you need audio. Excellent. And yes, and I will push as hard as I can for a Vegas date. I think that's a great idea. So yeah. But anyways, if you're a regular viewer and you hang out with us and all that kind of stuff, please consider becoming a patron subscriber. This is what makes this all possible and helps me out with this. It's why we've gotten improvements in our cameras and software and our microphones and all that kind of stuff. It's all because of you guys. We are trying to get to the point where we can hire a producer and all that kind of stuff, so I'm not just doing this on my own everywhere I go. To link in. And maybe even give Johnny gas money for when he comes to the studio occasionally would be a lovely thought. So please consider becoming a patron. That would be fantastic. If you can't, super chats are always an option, or PayPal. PayPal.me/HalSparks works just fine. That goes to the show as well as all my cameos and all that kind of stuff. I sequester that to help the show. So appreciate you guys. Anyways, I will see you guys again real soon. Twitch folks, I will be gaming your way pretty soon. Later on tonight even. Very exciting. Twitter, I'll be screaming in your ranks later on today as well. Keep your head on swivel. Take care of somebody and take care of somebody. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. And don't forget, vote.org. Pass that along. Make sure everybody you know knows to check. And yeah, and if you can't Patreon at the higher tiers and all that kind of stuff and go through all that stuff, you can make up your own number. If it's $1, do that. That's great. It would help us immensely. So I appreciate you guys, and I will see you guys very soon. Take care. I'm looking forward. End of the month, the February 29th, Madison, Wisconsin. I'm going to be doing the show from Chicago, either at studio or if we can dig up a location, which would be really cool. We'll do it from there. I'm going to see if I'm talking to CPT today about the possibility of that happening. If I do it from a location, we might do it up in Madison and pipe it in. That's a possibility as well. But I'd like to do it in studio in Chicago. If not, we'll figure that part of it out. But if you're in the Chicago area, I'm going to do a Patreon meetup there that in for the Madison show. It'll be cool. It's going to be great. So you're fantastic. I'll have money to go be a Patreon when Beetlejuice goes Nova. That's the spirit. So there you go. I appreciate it. All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Take care. Bye.